Hello and welcome everyone to RimWorld Odyssey. You want it, and I got it. And thanks to our good friends over at Ludion Studios, I get to play and share with you this adventure in this masterpiece of a DLC early. But enough yapping, let's dive right on in. To start us off, we're starting with our own grav ship and all the oodles upon oodles of things that come along with it. But things are not all fun and games. For you see, we've actually landed on a mechive platform in orbit above the planet, and we've really pissed off the mechanoids. And thus, it won't be long before they've come to eradicate us. We're going to need to take up arms so that we can defend ourselves against the mechanical menace. With our crew of Sissy, the grav ship's pilot, Coleman, the weapons expert, and Woody, the grav ship's co-pilot. We have mechanoids dropping in about 11 or so hours, and we are picking up on our sensors that there are a lot of drop pods heading to our location. Initially, we were hoping to fight them off, but it appears that this attack is going to be massive. Now you're probably saying to yourself, well, Rat Daddy, why don't you gather up all your people, get them on the ship, and let Sissy fly everyone the hell out of there? That's a splendid idea, my friend, but the only problem with that is we have a lot of resources, crucial resources that we'd be leaving behind. And as such, we're going to need to make sure that we can haul them into the grav ship before we fly out of here. And obviously the issue with that is the mechanoids are coming very soon, so we're gonna need to hightail it as fast as possible. Well, we did get the majority of them onto the ship. Now it's time for us to get ourselves on there before we have a bunch of scythers ripping us and turning us into mincemeat. Thankfully, it would seem we got aboard just in time as the mechanoids burst forth from their pods and started coming right for our ship, slamming their large bladed limbs onto our doors and all around the hull. And just as we had hypothesized, there were far too many to fight off. It was time for us to skedaddle. Landed safe and sound. Well, kinda. Looks like we might have damaged the ship's engines a little bit on our landing, but we were in a bit of a hurry. This also may have had something to do with our pilot's ability, our crew count, and also how many thrusters we have, but on the bright side, we are alive. And after some minor engine repair, the ship was fine too. And our spirits were much higher after seeing the beautiful landscape that we had arrived in. Right in the middle of a gigantic, fabulous, flowing river that was branching out in several directions. A vast landscape filled with gorgeous, wonderful wildlife as well, it would seem. But I'm afraid our sightseeing is over with, as we have work to do and time waits for no one. Unfortunately, the ship's grav engine does not produce any type of power. It simply allows the ship to fly, and thus power is going to be one of our highest priorities, right next to a safe place to sleep that isn't too crowded. Since nightfall will be upon us soon, we are going to be working on the latter of our priorities with a semi-shelter that we can actually build some proper beds in. Of course, we're going to collect some extra wood. We already have some in the ship, but it never hurts to have a little bit more. And with that, as the sun was setting, we would begin constructing ourselves a small canopy and 3 makeshift wooden beds. It was far from luxurious, but it sure beat sleeping on the ground and was twice as comfortable, kind of. Sleeping next to the flowing water was nice though, as the sounds of the roaring river rocked us to sleep like a baby's lullaby. After some much needed shut-eye, we could finally start taking care of that little power production problem with a wood-fired generator. In retrospect, I do wish I would have built a chem fuel generator inside the ship, as I planned on doing that later, but this is fine for now. You know, now that we've built some lights on the inside of the ship, ship, there is a good chance that perhaps we won't have such a hard time landing it, seeing how we can actually see the controls now that we have a safe semi-shelter to lay our weary heads at night, as well as some proper power flowing throughout the ship. I think it's about time that we worked on our third priority, expanding the ship. As you heard me mention earlier, we didn't want to sleep in there because it is extremely cramped, and we can't even walk through the darn thing without stepping over all of our resources, so we plan on remedying them. But this takes resources such as our limited amount of grav light panels, so if we plan on expanding past the ones we currently have, we'll need to go and find more, but even more importantly, it takes time, so we'll check back in on that in a moment. In the meantime, as we're working on the ship, Sissy, being its pilot, has decided that we should give it a proper name, as you would with any good vessel. We've settled on the name of Mechanoid's Bane. Now, this seems like a bit of an odd name, or a corny name. Well, it probably is pretty corny, to be honest with you, but it's because the primary goal, I believe, of this series, as of right now, is going to be hunting down the mechive to finish it off once and for all, to stop them from trying to kill us. Speaking of, a local squirrel has decided to try to take the reins from the mechanoids to try to take us down, but he was dealt with pretty swiftly. Ah, you poor dumb animal. Now that we've railed that little rodent, let's check back in on the ship. As you can see, the construction of our new additions are going quite well, I must say. Now that our ship has a big, beautiful backside for our thrusters as well as our crew cabins, one might even call it voluptuous. But more importantly, we were all quite excited to have some actual bedrooms, not only individual rooms, but just something that's not outside, as it was much more safe in here as well as much more comfortable. Alas, though, we could not hear the river quite as well, but the ship giveth and the ship taketh. Our rooms would be even better, though, once we take some of these ancient urns and put at the foot of our beds. Let's just hope they don't contain the remains of any dead ancients or anything of that sort. We are also deconstructing some of these ruins for steel, as it is a very useful resource, as I'm sure you could guess. We had already used up a lot that we had in storage, and thus we needed more and more and more to continue expanding and improving the ship. Some of these improvements include a proper pilot's chair for our Captain Sissy, as well as a steel table and some stools to eat at. That way no one's having an absolute fit over eating without a table. And, perhaps a little bit more important, 2 additional thrusters on the back of the ship. Not only would they assist us with taking off whenever we need to leave, but they will give us a lot of additional control over the ship when landing as well, and just also during flight. But we'll only be able to test them out at the earliest in 2.3 days, when our other engines are cooled down enough. While we're waiting on that to happen, I suppose we'll just sit around and take in the beautiful scenery, as well as build ourselves a tiny wooden shack with a makeshift research table so that we can educate ourselves. First and foremost, of course, we are going to be researching batteries. Since we're producing power, we need somewhere to store all the excess power. But another research project that we want to get around to, and most likely really our primary focus for the ship in terms of our long-term goal, is gun turrets. And we want to use these to turn our grav ship into basically a gunship. And thus, as you could suspect, we want to use our gunship to take down mechanoids and this damn dirty mechive. And this idea to create a gunship was actually an idea that was given to me by our friends over at Tales of the Rim, who you should subscribe to if you haven't already, as they make some amazing RimWorld cinematics. As soon as he heard about the grav ships in the blog post, he recommended the idea, knowing that I would love it, and indeed I do. And truly, I think that turning the grav ship into a gunship grav ship will actually help it live up to its name of Mechanoid's Bane as well. But that's a long-term project. We have a lot, and I really do mean a lot of research to do in the grav ship, and also in terms of different types of turrets before we get anywhere close to that. So while we're unlocking new different types of research, we're also going to be working on some defenses around the ship, or so I thought. Before we could get our defenses done, it would appear that we are being attacked by by a singular waster pirate, who appears to be planning out her attack. While she's doing that, I think we're going to plan out a preemptive attack of our own. After moving closer and realizing she was a singular person with a knife and no armor, we decided to just move in as best we could, taking a little bit of cover, though it wasn't really needed, and shooting her to the ground. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Now, as she lay here bleeding out in front of us and the rain started pouring down, we felt empathy and pity for her. We believe in second chances, and thus we decided to start patching up her wounds as best we could with some of the dirt lying around. We would end up taking her into the ship and giving her a makeshift prison cell in our dining room. We were hoping that some of our kind words as well as our hospitality might convince her to join us with time. Though, seeing how she was just trying to stab us in our kidneys a few moments ago, it's probably going to be a little bit of time, just a teeny bit. And in that time, we would actually finish up our defenses that we were working on, being some wooden barricades as well as some wooden bridges, allowing us to move around the river much easier, not only for working, of course, but also in case we have to run away. But I know what you're thinking, all this work and no play? Not to worry, my friends, we were sure to take breaks here and there, such as our Captain Sissy here taking a nice swim, or perhaps a bath, or perhaps both, to be honest with you. These vac suits can get a little bit rank after a few days. But once we had our defenses and other things that we were working on completed, it was time for us to continue expanding the ship itself, with this being the nose of the ship, as we're going to be adding in a kitchen as well as a food storage area, and perhaps most importantly, the cockpit, where all of our crew is going to be when we're actually flying this bad boy. And with that, my friends, our ship is no longer super cramped and crowded and things like that. We actually have some room to move around, which also means that we also have plenty of room to build new items and things that we need to keep it powered, and also to store more materials and yada yada yada. Absolutely perfect, as we needed plenty of room for all the batteries we're about to start building in the ship. It would also seem that the ship's sensors are picking up the energy signatures of another grav core, though the signature is quite faint, meaning that it's most likely underground, possibly in a ruined city in an ancient stockpile not too far from here. And by not too far from here, I mean several days' journey away, but only a hop and a skip for the ship. But at the moment, we're not quite ready for that, as we have plenty of prep work that needs to be done. First and foremost, we need to get our power generation source inside the ship itself so we can take it with us. As I'm sure you could guess, that would be the best way to do this. And we are going to be doing a chem fuel generator, so we also need to create a biofuel refinery so that we can make our own fuel. Once that was finally completed and we started turning some of the nearby trees into fuel for the ship and we got it powered up, the only thing left for us to do now is to pack up anything else that we didn't want to leave behind, like some of the resources at the wood-fired power generator and even our wooden barricades. I know I'm being a little nitpicky here, but I wanted to take as much as humanly possible. And besides, these barricades would serve us better now as thruster fuel. And before we left, I also wanted to add in 4 brand new chem fuel tanks. Now, I technically didn't need to do this, and realistically, I probably should have waited because it took up some time and resources, of course, which are very crucial to us at the moment, but I wanted to be proactive and go ahead and get ahead of it. You'll notice that these tanks are actually behind steel walls, and the reason for that is because I don't want any explosions coming out into our cockpit or our kitchen or literally anywhere else, and their blast will be contained if it happens. For the next few days, we are going to be working on refining plenty of fuel and fueling up these new tanks. That way we have plenty of excess in case we were to need it. I know, I'm being overcautious, but I prefer to be prepared for what the unknown holds. The only issue is that we've spent so much time in this area, we've eaten up all of our rations, so we're going to have to start producing producing our own food. Lucky for us though, we have a couple of firearms and the ibex in the area don't have any, so all of the wildlife around these parts were fair game. And paired with some of the wild berries that grew around here as well, they were the perfect protein and carb source for us, keeping our bellies full and our minds clear. For the next few days, we spent most of our time collecting resources like food and wood, and turning that wood into fuel, of course the raw meat and berries into cooked meals and things like that, filling up fuel tanks, and also just making some minor improvements to the crew's rooms with some proper end tables and dressers, making everyone that much happier. It was also during this time that Ditch, the waster pirate in the bowler cap that was trying to stick us in the back with her little shiv, you remember her, she finally joined us, thankfully. But the bad news is, it would seem that her colleagues have come looking for her. Now, I'm pretty sure we could take them on and finish them off, but I don't much want to take the risk of any of us getting injured, or even worse so, getting killed. Besides, we're basically ready. Now the issue is we can't exactly reach our destination, and this could be from the added weight of all the new additions onto the ship, including the new fuel tanks, so we'll have to make 2 little jumps. We landed on the outskirts of an ancient town without any issues. Kinda. We accidentally overcharged our grav engine on the landing, and, yeah, it's gonna take a little bit more time for it to cool down, but that's okay, don't worry. Besides, there are much worse things to worry about, like the fact that this little town is right in the middle of the Scar Lands, a land mangled by war and consumed by past battles. We've never visited them ourselves, but we have, of course, heard tell, as all who live in the rim of the galaxy have, about all the bloodshed and casualties that took place here. These regions are absolutely littered with the structures of once great civilizations. Now, only memories. And perhaps worst of all, they are packed to the gills with disease-ridden animals. Let's try not to get bit by any of them. They look a bit contagious. So, as you could guess, these lands are a little bit dangerous, and we really need a plan of attack. So, we all sat around before leaving the ship planning out what everyone needs to do to survive while we're waiting on the engines to cool down to get us to our true destination. Coleman and Woody would begin exploring throughout the ruins of this little town looking for any useful items and resources. There was mostly nothing of note, but on occasion we would find a few containers with steel and components, which are always useful. While they're out adventuring, Ditch and the others would begin actually setting up some growing zones so that we could grow some rice, some cotton, as well as some psychoid leaves. While Sissy was working on psychoid brewing as a research project, which wouldn't take all that long, I just forgot to record it. And the reason that we're growing these, rice to eat, cotton because we need some cloth to make clothing and we can also sell it, and of course psychoid because Ditch is going to go absolutely insane if we don't get rid of her psychoid dependency deficiency. Once Sissy was finally finished up helping us do some planting as well as research into brewing, we would now begin on smithing so we can start down the tech tree towards gun turrets as previously mentioned. And since we don't have any of those at the moment, we are going to start deconstructing some of the ruins in the area using the slate and limestone that we're getting from those to make ourselves some simple defenses. Nothing too fancy, just some barricades that we can take cover behind while in a gunfight, and we also threw some rock chunks in there for good measure. At one point, it looks like Coleman was flirting with Sissy, the captain, and now the two of them are having an affair. This was quite surprising, and the reason for that is I didn't realize that Coleman was a married man already. Oh, you filthy little slut. The reason I'm sickened by Coleman's infidelity, well, also not just because they're cheating on his wife, but because I have a feeling Sissy has no idea about it. There's no one around to tell Coleman's wife. You make me sick. Well, other than the scandalous behavior of other crew members, we ended up finishing smithing, and we are now going to be starting starting on machining. Don't worry, I won't tell you every single time we do one of these projects, but just these two, I guess, for now. After we took a good bit of time to collect more resources like steel in the area, as there was quite an abundance with all these structures around here being made of steel as well as stone blocks, we ended up using these resources to create ourselves another extension onto the back of the ship, as well as a storage facility within the ship in this new area. Okay, without the fancy talk, I'm gonna be real with you here. It's just a big, long hallway with more shelves, okay? I'm sorry. The main point, though, we can hold more stuff, which is always great. Sometime later, we finally had our very first harvest of rice, which was perfect because we were beginning to run dangerously low on food, and I really didn't want to have to try to hunt any of these diseased critters. We also ended up having our very first Outlander trade caravan encounter, and it just so happened to be our luck that they were trading weapons. They had a pretty sweet, good quality LMG, and they were willing to trade it for a little bit of our medicine and components, so we accepted. We would give this weapon to our newest member, Ditch, not only because she desperately needed a weapon, of course, but also because she had the best shooting skill out of all of us, with it being an 8. Yes, our weapons expert Coleman only had like a 5. You know what? I'm starting to really not like him. I'm also quite glad we bought it when we did, because it wasn't long after that we started having to fight off some of these batshit crazy Scaria-infected pumas and other animals in the town. Speaking of which, as we are exploring the final bits and bobs of this town, we ended up spotting something interesting. This little death triangle happens to be a hunter trap. When activated, out comes a hunter drone, basically an automated bomb that will follow you around until it explodes. G-O-G, I bet this thing would really hurt if it exploded on someone. Foreshadowing. Well, I have no interest in getting Coleman killed, even though he's a filthy, no-good cheater, so we're gonna lock this building up and never touch it again. On the opposite side, though, we would end up finding an ancient uplink that no doubt has some useful information. So we would have the captain and all her intellect come down and begin hacking it. Once she was finally completed, we indeed got some intel. Apparently this town was the staging ground for some orbital mining operations, and this uplink just so happened to have intel about a plasteel asteroid in orbit around the planet. This could be quite useful for us once we're finished with our current quest, that is. Late one night we were all sleeping, and things were as silent and as quiet as could be, until some Neanderthals walked into town looking to stab a little old me. It looks like it's only a couple of them, but if I know Neanderthals, I also know that they're tough as nails, and it's gonna take a lot of bullets to put them down. And so it would. The first one would absorb a good bit of these bullets before finally dying, and then the second wasn't too far behind, although he seemed to have survived. And again, we had been met with the moral dilemma of whether or not we shoot this Neanderthal between the eyes and put him down for good, or do we tend to him out here shoving rocks into his wounds and give him a second chance. We went with the latter, mostly because not only would he be a great fighter, but he had an absolutely stellar plant skill. So we'll take him in and try to convince him to join us. If we could convince Ditch, I think we could convince anyone. Speaking of Ditch, she was working her little waster arse off on growing all of our crops, and we had finally gotten plenty of cotton as well as psychoid leaves, meaning we could finally brew up some proper psychoid tea for her, getting rid of her deficiency and a negative mood debuff, which has been causing her to have tantrums and destroy a lot of stuff in the ship lately. We won't talk about it because it's not a problem now. We also finally finished our research into machining, but like I said, I'm not going to bring up all the projects, so moving on. We ended up having a large storm coming into the area with toxic rain that would slowly sicken anyone that's not under the roof of the ship, so we locked everyone inside. This type of weather seems to be quite common here in the Scarlands. what with all the pollution and nuclear radiation and, stuff like that. A couple days later, once the rain had finally let up, though, I noticed one of these beautiful bog hounds. Basically, a dog that used to be a dog and is now kinda sorta a wolf. And I wanted to tame it. Woody went out with a little handful of rice, and to my surprise, we easily ended up taming the bog hound. I think it's just Woody's great animal skill, and to be honest, I couldn't believe we had done this first try. Don't get too attached though, because later on, towards the end of the episode, I completely lost it, or killed it, or something. Spoiler alert. Sorry. But until that happens, he can nuzzle our colonist and we can pet him and enjoy our time with him and maybe give him a bath because he kind of smells like death. And hey, maybe he can help us load all this stuff up into the ship before we leave. Or not, because he's not trained. But either way, our shelves are stocked and our grav engine is ready. It's time for us to head to our final destination. And with that, my friends, we have finally entered the heart of the city. As is becoming tradition at this point, our engines were slightly damaged during the landing. Okay, we're still trying to get our sea legs, or grav legs, whatever you want to call it. Shortly after landing, we had also convinced Dragon the Neanderthal to join our worthy cause. Thank God, because I need someone with a tough head to beat open these underground entrances. Just kidding, I wish that's how it worked. We actually have to hack them, which is where Sissy's specialty comes in handy, as she has the big old brain on her. Even so, though, hacking these types of places were very tedious, as we would constantly get locked out for several hours and we would have to come back and try again. And while we were at it, we also finished up research into blowback operations. Wait a minute, didn't I say I wasn't going to tell you every time I'd done this? Indeed I did, but this time it was important because our next research project, gun turrets. A shame we didn't get it completed in time to take any down into the underground stockpile with us, but we had enough manpower. I don't think it'll be an issue. This place gave us the heebie-jeebies, I believe you call it, not only because of the red ambient light around every corner, but as we started hacking these doors and walking through different rooms, we didn't know what was going to be around every corner. We would end up finding a couple of ancient spacer crates with some well-preserved hyperweave inside, but don't let looks fool you. Letting down our guard now could mean that we end up getting killed in a moment. We would continue our righteous exploration of this stockpile bunker, whatever it was, under the city, and really all we ended up finding was more empty rooms and also a few pallets of survival meals, which would definitely come in handy, but there was no grav core nor any type of grav tech here at all. I was quite perplexed by this, and then I realized above ground in the city there were 2 more of these underground stockpiles. Surely the GravTech is in one of them, and thus so continues our expedition into these cavernous places. After the captain had successfully hacked into the second one, we would end up doing much of the same, exploring it just as we had the one previous, finding many survival meal pallets and things like that. Perhaps these are doomsday bunkers, we said to ourselves as Coleman wandered into a room not paying attention, activating a hunter drone, which ended up exploding and downing him, damn near killing him. Thank God Ditch wasn't too far away and she could immediately begin tending to the wounds of Coleman the filthy cheater. No, I'm not going to let that go. He's fine though, don't worry. And we ended up opening up yet another spacer container which had some gravlight panels, which we took as a good sign that the GravTech must be in this stockpile. But after Woody ended up chopping a few insectoids in half with his axe, we quickly we came to realize that the grav core that we were looking for was not in this place, which was some pretty shitty news. But some good news back up on the surface in the ship. We finished our research into gun turrets, and some even better news is if there's only 3 of these stockpiles and 2 of them didn't have the tech we're looking for, third time's gotta be the charm, right? Well, we sure hope so. You know, we finished up that research for turrets, but we didn't end up bringing any down here with us because, well, all the other ones really didn't have anything that concerned us. A big mistake on my part because the very next room in this place had another hunter drone which just about got us, but thankfully did not. Defenses seem to be a bit better in this place, and I can see why after another spacer container revealed a great big seed. Not just any great big seed, this was the Archean seed. Apparently this sprouts an Archean tree eventually, which can convert nearby terrain into rich soil. It can apparently completely terraform dead worlds and can survive in the vacuum of space. I see why defenses are so great here, as this can turn a completely barren planet into a lush forest world. But as we continued on throughout the facility, we were swarmed by swarm drones. Thankfully, these little basketball-sized bastards don't explode and they simply try to beat you to death. So we could come in, start hitting them with Woody's axe and shoot them right between the eyes, I guess you could call it, with Sissy's pistol. And once they were finally finished off, we could explore this room, finding many gravlight panels and, yes indeed, even the gravlight core. Finally, what we came here for, right in the palm of our hands. Now, look, call me a coward if you want, because I definitely am, but I don't want this series to end before it really even begins, and even though this facility probably has some really great items all throughout it, still, because this is the best one with all the great items that we've explored thus far, I didn't continue exploring because it was too darn dangerous. So instead I opted for chucking all of the items that we had collected up the ladder and then going back to the ship, along with our new grav core, of course, which we would immediately use to build ourselves an extender onto the back of the mechanoid's bane. And this would increase our part capacity from 500 being the max to 750, and would also give us a much larger area towards the back that we could use to build. Now, from what I understand, collecting this grav tech is also going to help us find out where the mechive is in orbit, or wherever it may be. I believe it's in orbit, but it is also going to get us one step closer to a gigantic gunship, which is also very important to us. Speaking of which, now that we found our first core, we're also going to try to start working on standard grav tech as our research. The only problem is microelectronics is in front of that, and it's going to take a very long time. Using some steel, I ended up building 2 new research tables to help us out with getting this done as quickly as possible, and I'll do my best to summarize the events and try to leave out some of the boring stuff until we get that finished. That way I don't bore you to tears. First things first, we ended up a couple days later having a sun blocker set up by mechanoids arrive in the area to, well, block out the sun. So, even though we didn't exactly have to, I thought it might be fun to go out and to teach these mechanoids who's boss, sending out Dragon, Ditch, and Coleman. Once they had finally arrived after traveling on foot for quite a while, we had seen that most of the defenses were on the southwestern side, and so we were just going to completely avoid that area. Using a spear and the butt of our rifles, we bashed the door in and we started attacking the sun blocker until, well, eventually there was no more sun blocker. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Simple and straight to the point, and again, because the defenses were on the opposite side, we left without incident, returning home not too long thereafter. For quite a bit of time, we would collect resources like trees in the area. What few trees were sparsely populated throughout the Scar lands, that way we could turn them into chem fuel, completely filling up our generators and our chem fuel tanks. We also had a minor raid during this time, but we killed them all, no big deal. While exploring the city, we also ended up finding an insectoid hive, and I thought for sure that they were going to catch Dragon and eat his intestines, but we managed to scare them off, it would seem, and, well, they didn't really care anymore, and we never went back. And then, finally, after what felt like forever, we finished microelectronics. Whew. With this very important research under our belts, we can also build a high-tech research table. Things should go much smoother and much faster now. And naturally, our next step in the research tree was going to be standard grav tech. Now, this wasn't exactly a requirement for the moment, as there is also some other research we need to do to make oxygen and things like that, but both are quite important, so we're going to go ahead and start with this one. And I could already tell it was going much faster. This was a breath of fresh air compared to microelectronics. We finished it shortly thereafter. Now we finally have quite a few new parts unlocked, such as large thrusters. The only problem is large thrusters also require vaxstone blocks, and vaxstone blocks can only be obtained from asteroids. And to go into space to land on an asteroid, we're also going to need some technology that can create oxygen and seal the ship so that people, don't die. I think you see where I'm going with this. So next up on the chopping block is going to be orbital tech that will allow us to build vac barriers and oxygen pumps. Very, very, very crucial things. But as we're doing all this research, the mechive had finally determined our location, and thus we couldn't stay here for much longer. It was time for us to leave. We would actually begin flying the ship to the south. This way we would be in position to jump to an asteroid next. This place was probably the coziest that we had landed in thus far. This is a glacial plain, an icy, cold biome that also has many trees, surprisingly enough, which was perfect for refueling the ship. But as mentioned, it was very, very cold, and until this point we hadn't built any heaters inside the ship as we didn't really need them. But oh boy, did we quickly need them here. And it would seem that we got them done just in the nick of time as a great big blizzard would set into these lands right after that. Not to worry though, inside the ship is toasty warm as mentioned, so we're all good. Plus, our vac suits do extremely well in extreme temperatures like this. Although Dragon and Ditch didn't have vac suits, so we quickly used some of our cloth to throw together some parkas for them. Ah, there we are, snuggly warm like the rest of us. As we were finishing up our research and waiting on the engine to cool down for us to take off once more, we detected some cargo pods that had landed nearby containing a holy shit ton of kibble. It's almost like the RimWorld gods want us to tame another animal after we lost our dog. We're not going to talk about that though. Let's talk about our new possible pets, these teeny little sparrows. I really wanted to get a flying pet, and I was going to be absolutely thrilled to have a sparrow or a raven or something like that. But alas, the luck was not in my favor, and we failed every single time. And I think we tried like 8 times. That's pretty bad. On the bright side, though, even though we were striking out with sparrows, we would knock orbital tech out of this world, baby. Finally completed, giving us access to all the things that we needed to go into orbit. First things first, we're going to be building some oxygen pumps. One that is going to be in the main area here, and we're going to open up all the doors in our crew cabins and stuff. That way it's actually feeding through all the rooms. And we also ended up building one in the kitchen. That way we can close that door in case we need to seal ourselves in, that sort of thing. Next up, we were going to build something of an airlock. Kinda, sorta. We're actually going to be using vac barriers just on the outside of our steel doors. It's kinda like a force field door to seal in the temperature and the oxygen, as I understand it at least. And with that, my friends, we are ready for orbit. finally back among the stars where we belong. Our very first asteroid. And surprisingly this time around, we didn't even take any damage when landing. Wow, we're getting the hang of things, huh? We have achieved a lot today, but there is still so much more to do, even though we've made plenty of milestones towards our ultimate goal of a great big gunship and taking down this mechive. I suppose the rest will have to wait. For now, my friends, I bid you farewell. Hello friendos and welcome back to RimWorld Odyssey, where we've recently landed on our very first asteroid with our very own grav ship. Today, my friends, we are going to be completing a lot of the required research as well as building ourselves our very own base here. Funny enough, we had landed right near a large gap and couldn't walk on the asteroid until we tossed down a few wooden planks, that way we don't fall right through. Gravity might be quite low here, but it's important to remember we don't have any jump packs to get us back up if we start to fall. One of the first things we immediately noticed on the asteroid is that there was already some ancient tech here, one of which being these strange red boxes which upon further inspection appear to be ancient mining charges, basically demolition charges for mining operations. Something tells me they might be good for defenses. The captain would immediately start mining some samples of the asteroid, and indeed it is exactly what we need. Vaxstone. We wasted absolutely no time chiseling it into blocks that we could actually use for our large ship thrusters. But as we're mining out this new resource, we are also going to begin working on some research, and in this case it's going to be hydroponics. The reason for that, even though we do have a decent bit of food on board the ship, we're going to start eating through that pretty quickly, so we need to be able to start growing our own. While we're in orbit, it would seem that the ship has begun detecting a massive gravtech energy reading, and this confirmed our suspicions that we had prior that the mechive is indeed in orbit around the planet. This was some very useful information, though we still don't currently have its exact coordinates. The more gravtech we collect, though, the closer we'll get to pinpointing exactly where this mechive is. We currently know of 2 other locations with gravtech, so we'll try to visit those next episode. Today, we need a base of operations. Not only that, but we also need to make some pretty major upgrades to our grav ship itself. Thankfully, this asteroid seems to have a lot of compacted machinery to help us out with that. Important to remember before you do any construction on your grav ship, make sure your colonists that don't have any vac suits are sealed away in the kitchen, or wherever still has oxygen and pressure, that way they don't get their brains sucked out through their eye sockets. Once you've done that, you're free, just as we are, to get rid of the old small thrusters and replace them with some great big ones once you've collected enough gravstone, just as we have. These bad boys are much more powerful and much more efficient. And with that, our ship is looking pretty darn good. Now, I would like to get started on turning it into a gunship today, and we might get a tiny start on that, but I think most of today's episode is going to be making an asteroid base for ourselves. Just so many fun plans that I have. Not to worry, we'll get around to all of them. But for now, let us begin with our mining of our new base. Now, you'll notice we are starting out with a 3-wide hallway. This way we have plenty of room. If for some reason we get raided and they somehow get inside, we won't be stuck having a little cramped hallway to run through, right? And just as well, the first room that we're going to be mining out is going to be for our growing zones. I do want to touch on real quick before I forget later on, we do have the seed for that certain type of bioengineered tree that would probably let us terraform this entire asteroid. For right now, I'm not going to do that. I want some feedback from you guys, and we just save it for now. It wouldn't take us long at all after that to finish up hydroponics research, which is going to be quite crucial to growing things here on the asteroid since we're not terraforming. And next up, we're going to work on solar panels. Being outside the atmosphere, I would expect that they would be much more effective here. But as we were educating ourselves on these new technologies, we were also getting raided by pirates. If you thought leaving thinking the planet's surface meant that you were safe and sound, you are sadly mistaken, and unfortunately it would seem that you have severely underestimated just how infested this galaxy is with pirate scum. They have about the same amount of people that we do, but the problem is that 2 of our people don't have vac suits, so we are technically outnumbered. But even so, I believe I have an idea. What if we take these ancient charge mines and create bottleneck points where they'll have to come through and we could try to blow them up with them? Yes, it's dangerous and crazy, but it might just work. The pirates were a bit more intelligent than we gave them credit for. They had split up into groups of 2, so Coleman would stay here and try to fend them off and to blow them up, while Sissy and Woody went to fend off the others. Initially, we weren't having much luck with our explosive ambush, but as we managed to pull back a bit, drawing them in even more near, we ended up snagging them. 2 down, 2 to go. The other 2 were approaching far too fast for us to have any luck trying to hit the explosives to kill them before they made it here. And given that they both had better weaponry than we decided to hide by one of the rock formations on the asteroid and wait for them. And by the time that they approached us, we sprang out, firing Sissy's pistol at their heads, and Woody would engage them with his axe. Though it was preferable we didn't have to try to aim to kill them right away. We could just make enough holes in their suits and let nature take its course. One of them had already been killed, and the other, after a quick shot from our pistol, had hit the floor. Her skills and traits were none too useful for us, but her vac suit, that, on the other hand, would be very useful. We decided to strip her of it while she's still alive, that way it wouldn't be tainted by her corpse. Now, this might seem quite cruel to you, as it did to me as well, but let me ask you, if we would have been the ones who were defeated, would they have offered us the courtesy of taking us inside and stripping us and killing us quickly? Probably not. Now that we have another untainted vac suit, we would immediately give it to Dragon the Neanderthal. The idea of a Neanderthal in a spacesuit up here on an asteroid will never not be funny to me, but funny enough, Dragon has a pretty decent mining skill and would come in very handy for the mining of our asteroid base. Well, actually it's like a 3 or a 4, but for some of our other people who have a 1 or a 0, I'd consider it decent. Strangely enough, here on the asteroid, we often have ship chunks falling. It would seem that maybe some of the space debris in orbit around the planet is often colliding with these asteroids. The more we're up here, the more we learn. We didn't mind this at all either, because we had already been using up a lot of our steel. Now, obviously, as we kind of touched on earlier, there were a lot of ancient mining machines here on the asteroid as well, and destroying these would give us steel slag, which we could refurbish into steel and thus replenish our steel storage. And if that doesn't show you how desperate I am right now to get a lot of steel, I don't know what will. As we were getting more steel, though, we had finally finished up our research into solar panels, which would be a perfect use of our steel, as well as all the compacted machinery that we've been mining, thus giving us a passive way to generate power, and also diversifying our power generation methods away from just chem fuel, which was also quite important because as we were creating our growing zone here with a hydroponics basin, a heater, an oxygen pump, and a sun lamp, it's important to mention that we were starting to run out of chem fuel for the ship's generators as well. Which isn't too big of a deal because we could power everything with enough solar-powered generators, but of course we want this base to be self-sufficient, not relying on the ship itself. That way when we leave, anyone that we end up leaving here will be fine on their own. And this is also why we ended up building a cutoff switch between the ship and the electrical cables that go to the network within the base. After some time, everything was finally ready. Well, of course, once we got rid of the vacuum and pumped some oxygen in. Now, I do think that plants create their own oxygen, although that could just be trees, enough that it actually counts. I'm not exactly sure. I am somewhat diving into this series a little bit blind, even though I've read the blog post and stuff. I didn't play anything prior to this. Regardless, though, we are now ready to go about growing our first crops, and of course, we're going with rice. Coleman, the filthy homewrecker, also had the bright idea that we should give our new asteroid base a proper name name. As for now, I am going to be calling it Placeholder, as I would like for you guys in the comment section down below to provide me with some names that you might think are fitting. We also ended up building our very first comms console. This way we can start doing some trading with orbital traders. Shouldn't be too hard since we are also above the atmosphere. And we built an orbital trade beacon inside the ship so we can go ahead and start selling off some of our textiles and other things we have to make some money, and also to start buying some useful resources for a little project I have in mind, but I'll save that for later. Now by this point we have spent a very long time here at the asteroid, and during this entire time Ditch hasn't got to leave the ship at all, and she is in desperate need of a vac suit. The quickest and most reasonable solution to this as it stands with our current situation was to take one from a corpse. And so we did. Now obviously it's tainted, this is going to cause a pretty big mood debuff, but my god, she was going stir crazy inside the ship, and besides, we really needed the extra manpower. Without the suit, she's just staying inside, eating up all of our food and barely contributing. It would be different if we had a cryo sleep casket, but we don't, so we're just going to have to put up with the mental breaks like her psychite binges. And now she can finally join everyone else experiencing our humble beginnings here on this floating rock. Oh boy, ain't she a beaut? We still need quite a bit of work before it's self-sufficient here, and before anybody can stay here, but we'll get it done. Now, as previously mentioned, there are a lot of these mining charges still just scattered all around the asteroid, and we have been trying to use them for defenses, so on each side of the asteroid that comes around to where the ship is docked, as well as where the base entrance is, we started getting these bottleneck points once more, preemptively just preparing ourselves to use them against raiders. And while we're at it, we decided to go ahead and begin creating ourselves some barricades that are actually made of vac stone, since we just have such an abundance of it. That is probably one of the greatest things about mining out the asteroid for the base, is we get so much stone to use. And though of course the construction takes quite a while, by using it, it is a very durable material. I wanted to throw in some turrets to help us out, but by this point we were running dangerously low on steel, and we had basically gotten as much as we could from this asteroid and all the ancient stuff on it. Besides sitting around and waiting on more spacecraft chunks to fall, I thought that it could be a good idea if maybe we took the ship to another asteroid, but funny enough, none of these asteroids seem to have any traces of actual steel. There was uranium, silver, gold, plasteel, everything but normal steel. So while we were racking our brains about where we could go about finding steel, we were also going to begin working on the research into transport pods, as this method of transportation was going to be much more convenient and viable than flying the actual grav ship all over the place. It is important to mention though, along with the demolition charges here on the asteroid, we also have ancient transport pods that had previously been used to move ore and stone chunks back to the surface, and not only are these still fully operational, but as you can see, they are completely filled with chem fuel. It is a one-way trip, however. Using these transport pods does mean that we won't have a way back to the ship and to our new base once we arrive at our destination. However, we were becoming quite desperate as we were using up the last bits and bobs of wood that we had for chem fuel to keep the ship power on, and the issue is we can't build any more solar panels because, well, we also don't have any more steel. We had to do something. During this time, we would continue mining out the base, giving us some time to continue our research into transport pods before leaving the asteroid, and that way also we could maybe wait around and see if any more spaceship chunks fall so we can deconstruct them and that sort of thing, but none really ever came. Something interesting I thought might be worth noting though is that while we were mining out the rest of the base, we actually found an inner cave network inside the asteroid that didn't lead outside anywhere. This would also be useful later on. As for now though, it was time for us to head back down to the planet's surface using the ancient transport pods so that we could get some chem fuel as well as some much needed steel. Sissy and Dragon had landed and were going to begin setting up camp. A coastal region that was absolutely lush with plenty of trees and other vegetation. Perfect for what we needed. No doubt some of the ruins in the area, as well as some of these rock formations, are sure to have steel. Speaking of, one of these nearby structures from ancient times seems to be intact for the most part, so we decided to build a fire in there, as well as a couple of beds to keep us safe from any predators in the night, and to keep us warm, obviously. The vac suits meant that we really didn't have to worry about the temperature at all, but we like to take them off at night when we sleep, that way we can get nice and comfy. But we wasted no time. We were playing no games, and we got straight to business, chopping down as many trees as humanly possible and stacking them up in a great big pile for us to use. Just as well, we had successfully located a few veins of steel ore ripe for the taking. Meanwhile, back at the asteroid base, shit. Here we go again. We had a couple of pirates dropping in. Thankfully, it only seemed to be the two of them though, so we did outnumber them, but that still doesn't mean we're not at risk of death, so we quickly expended what little resources we had left inside the ship on a mini turret. As the pirates began coming up to our barricades, our turret was helping us fire at them, although our inaccuracies was accidentally causing some of our demolition charges to go off, but that's okay. I would have preferred to have used them on a much larger raid, but I suppose as long as they're killing pirates, they are serving their purpose. Speaking of, the remaining pirate here got into a little bit of a kerfuffle with Woody, but Ditch ended up sneaking up behind her, hitting her in the back of the head with her rifle, knocking her unconscious. Thanks to not killing her right away, we could strip her and watch her suffocate out here in the void as we hauled her suit back into the ship. And now Ditch finally had a proper vac suit, one that wasn't just filled with dried corpse bile and blood and other disgusting things, and long gone are the days of that filthy mood debuff from wearing it. Back down at our resource collection camp, we finally built our biofuel refinery, meaning that we could turn these useless chunks of wood into some proper fuel to send back to the ship. However, while we were here, we ended up getting caught by the mechanoid hive, and it would appear that they are going to be sending mechs to fight us in 3 days. This put us in a little bit of a time crunch. Thankfully though, right after that, we did end up finishing our research into transport pods, and for any of you that might have been wondering how I was going to get them back to the base and to the ship and even send resources up, this is indeed how, but I'm sure you probably already knew. Since we're running out of time before the mechs arrive, we immediately started working on some little fuel depots and the transport pods themselves, and we wasted 0 time stocking them full of fuel and as much steel as we could pack in. And with that, we finally sent our very first care package back home. Perfect timing as well, I might add, as we were currently experiencing an eclipse up here, and our chem fuel generators were really struggling to power everything without our solar panels, and it ended up ending though anyway, so whatever. Now that our resource camp is finally profitable with lots of steel coming back up to the asteroid, we can finally also begin building more solar panels, making the base truly self-sufficient away from the ship. Yes, I was just complaining about an eclipse almost making the base go radio silent, but with this steel we can also build more batteries. That way we'll be fine if another happens. Thanks to these oodles upon oodles of steel and fuel, we could also go ahead and start building more hydroponics basins, making more and more food, an overabundance of food realistically, but truly you can never have too much food. Besides, we hope to have a pretty hefty population at the asteroid base. The 3 days were up though, and the mechive had arrived to try to kill us at the resource camp, but it was actually just one scyther. I'm sure you could imagine my relief when I realized we weren't going to be fighting 125 pikemen and lancers. I was very surprised. Is this the mechanoid threat that we've been running from this whole time? Dragon easily downed and killed this scyther with his spear. Perhaps we've been overreacting to the threat that these mechanoids actually pose, I thought to myself, as we continued working on the base. Not only were we going to continue mining out a few rooms for folks, a large storage room, a large hallway that is actually going to have something of a makeshift kitchen, which I couldn't decide whether or not I wanted to turn into a kitchen or maybe a prison, but since we only have so many pirates coming all at once, I thought a place to eat at and a nice place to cook at would probably be more useful, of course. You'll notice as well, around this time, we brought back from the resource camp the resources that we had left over, some wood, chem fuel, and some steel, and we also brought back Captain Sissy and Dragon. Mostly because we completely depleted the area of steel, and I didn't feel like having to deal with yet another mech raid, even if it was just one other scyther. Now that everything was finally mined out, and we had plenty of room to build in, we started with our storage area, adding in an orbital trade beacon with a great big beautiful spherical room here, with plenty of room to store all sorts of things, like all of our vaxstone, which we are building basically everything out of, except for our sleeping bags, as I didn't really want to have to build any stone beds. They're not very comfortable, of course. And besides, we had plenty of cloth to spare that we had grown previously. And my friends, with that, we finally had our asteroid base. Obviously, this is not completed. There's so much more mining and construction to do, but we do actually have a self-sufficient base that we can leave people at while we take our grav ship out to do other things like quest and searching for grav tech, which is exactly what we wanted. This place was amazing. We all loved it. It was our own little paradise in the heavens, and nothing at all could bring us down. Except, it would seem that the mechive has scanned and found our location here at the asteroid base. Now, you, just as I, at this time when playing, probably aren't too concerned. We just fought a raid from the mechive, and it was one scyther. Who cares? That's what I thought too. They would be arriving in 7 days, though we didn't pay attention to the notification until we only had a little over 2 days left, just as when they had discovered our resource camp. This notification gave us a little bit of a scare though, regardless of the fact that we had no idea what was to come, so we ended up building a couple mini turrets to help us defend the base for when the mechanoids arrive. Other than that though, we were completely carefree. We were even looking into giving people homes inside of the base itself, as these bedrooms that we had created were slightly more impressive and a little bit larger than the ones on the ship and would give people less of a mood debuff. Throughout this entire time, we've also been trading with orbital traders when we can, selling them many useful things from our ship like hyperweave that is also going to make us a lot of money. And when we could, we would also be purchasing many things from them as well, such as advanced components and plasteel. This was going to be a surprise, as I have something in mind, and I guess it still kind of is, but I'm bringing it up now so that you know we do have these resources in our possession. We even sold off some of our grav light panels to go about affording all of these resources, so you know this little surprise is quite the serious item, I suppose. In the meantime, though, we were simply beautifying the base by smoothing the walls. That way everyone's bedrooms were nicer, and just all the rooms in general were nicer. We had also started on research into a multi-analyzer, which is going to take a very long time, and realistically the only reason we cared about this right now is because it is a prerequisite for the shuttle research, which would allow us to create our very own. But then we ended up getting raided once again by pirates. Initially, I actually didn't mind them dropping in to try to kill us because they were going to wait a while and plan out their attack, which would mean that the mechanoids were going to drop in as well and they could fight each other. And so they would, but as you can see with all these drop pods, there were many more than we had anticipated. Scythers immediately burst from their pods and began fighting us. Dragon, along with Coleman, would put down the first and the other would get a lucky slice or two in on our gun turret before we could kill it. Once those two were down, we decided to check in on the pirates, who weren't holding up so well against the mechanoids. Thankfully, though, they took a couple down with them, saving us the trouble. They were scattered all over the asteroid, though, making it quite hard for us to take them all out with any of our explosives or anything of that sort, so we would have to resort to fighting them one by one, and in doing so, we would have 2 of our people go down. Woody and Ditch severely injured, but both still alive. Sissy and Dragon would scoop them both up very quickly to take them inside the base, as Coleman was dealing with the final Scyther. I suppose he's not so bad after all. We immediately started tending to our wounded to ensure that nobody bled out on the inside of the asteroid base, and thankfully, with a bit of luck and a bit of skill, everyone would be a-okay for now. We would even manage to tend to one of the pirates going by the name of Nathan. That way we could rescue them and attempt to recruit them, if they would be so willing to join us, that is. But even after all that, something was off. The mechanoids had been defeated, but they were still coming. An imminent threat, not within 7 days, at literally any moment. We had to get the hell out of here. I guess it's about time I revealed my little surprise project to you. This, my fine friendos, is a grav anchor. You see, whenever you take the grav ship away from a map like this, the map is just completely gone. You completely lose it. But with a grav anchor, that is not the case, and you could actually come back to the map anytime you so choose. This was our home now, and we were not going to completely abandon it forever. No. Even mechanoids couldn't keep us away from here. We may leave for now, but we will be back. With the threat of the mechanical menace dropping in on us at any moment, we had no choice but to quickly take everything to the ship as quickly as possible, not even caring where we threw down batteries or resources or anything, as long as it was on the ship when we left. But I'm afraid we've run out of time. They might be able to make us leave our home, but we will be back. And it looks like we'll be doing a lot of work when we get back as well. Ruthless machines. We've arrived at an ancient city in the Scarlands. It appears this place is currently experiencing a toxic fallout as radiation rains from the skies. We're currently looking for a damaged ancient reactor, so something tells me that we are in the right place. Let's hope it doesn't take us long to locate this, the other grav tech, and eventually that damn mechive. I want to go back home as soon as possible. Our team of 5 is currently experiencing some pretty hellish, toxic conditions in this ancient city. This fortified facility should have the ancient reactor that we're looking for that will be containing the grav tech that we require. Immediately upon opening up the blast doors, we were met with gunfire by a sentry drone. Our team would quickly rush in, shoving a spear straight through its thorax, I guess, and blasting it with a shotgun, killing it. Further down the hallway, it would appear that the entire facility is absolutely crawling with these ancient drones. It's starting to make a lot more sense why nobody but us has come here to shut down this reactor yet. Slowly but surely, room by room, we were quickly taking out every single drone that we came upon. But even in doing so, that doesn't mean that we're in the clear just yet. One of the rooms that we had entered turrets seemed to be some type of fuel storage area with plenty of containers of chem fuel. Absolutely perfect for our grav ship, but at the moment we do have much more pressing issues, I'm afraid, as we would continue searching throughout the facility for this reactor. During our exploration, we would come across many a security terminal, and in hacking them, we would actually be able to reprogram a turret as well as open up a few blast doors, making things much more convenient for us. We didn't know that there were turrets in here though, which begs the question, what is it protecting? Well, we decided to start going that way so that we could find out. We ended up encountering some swarm drones, which unlike the hunter drones, as we know, don't explode, so they were hardly any concern. Shoot them, stab them, and they're gone. And in the very next room, we found the reactor, as well as a couple of turrets that had destroyed our reprogrammed turret that were protecting it. It was about high time we put this absolute behemoth out of its misery, not only getting us the grav core, but also getting rid of the toxic fallout that it was creating. But first, we would have to duck behind these corners in the doorways to take out the turrets. Once that was finished, we were good to go. Our big-brained captain would be the one to end up hacking it. We ended up getting locked out for a bit, but eventually we would finish it. The reactor was shut down, and the grav core was ours. Now with the grav core in our possession, we were free to also go throughout the rest of this facility looking for any useful items such as an animal pulsar, which we'll probably just sell. And we were also able, of course, to hack any uplinks that we found, and in doing so, we actually got intel from one about an ancient skygate in orbit around the planet. Ironically, it appears to not be all that far from our asteroid base that we lost to the mechanoids last episode, but we weren't picking up any energy signatures of a gravtech or grav cores there, so it'll have to wait. Speaking of gravtech though, in the facility after we had completely cleared it out, some of the last things that we ended up finding in some spacer containers were more grav light panels. By this point, we have plenty of them, an overabundance one might say, which is completely fine by me because 4 of our 5 crew damn near lost their lives fighting in there to get what we got. Nevertheless, I digress. We started hauling all of these items onto the ship before we decided to leave, and this would take a little bit of time. So we ended up getting a communication from the leader of the Outlanders on the planet. Apparently a fugitive of his was evading the law and had taken one of the transport pods fleeing to an abandoned orbital platform. Now, we're not bounty hunters, so we normally wouldn't care about this type of thing, but apparently the reward for executing this fugitive is a grav core that the Outlanders have somehow gotten into their possession. Looks like we have another mission to go on. Before we do anything like that though, we need to outfit our ship and to enhance it with some proper weaponry, which is going to require a lot of research on our part, so that'll be something that we have to tackle in the future. Besides, at the moment we have other locations that we need to tackle that are actually on the surface of the planet not too far away, but we'll deal with this fugitive in due time. In the meantime, it looks like Ditch is throwing a party to celebrate their great victory here and shutting down the reactor. Oddly enough, they decided to have their little soiree inside one of the rooms of the facilities, right next to another room with a hunter drone. But it looks like everyone had a lot of fun and nobody died. Once everyone was in good spirits, they also managed to talk Nathan, the pirate who attacked us on the asteroid base last episode, into joining us. Perfect, now we can all trauma bond about being beaten down by mechanoids together. Nathan could also help us out with other tasks that we needed done on the ship, which would free us up to do many other things, such as finally adding some turrets onto the ship. Now we did have some last episode, couple of them, I think, and the mechanoids completely destroyed them, so we have more now. And we would also put a high priority on giving the ship more thrusters. The more that we have, the better control of the ship that we have, which means better flight, better landings, and even more range so we can go further. And with that, my friends, we're off. Supposedly, in this new location, there is also another grav core to be found. This is no city, though. It appears to be the remains of a mechanoid orbital platform that had fallen long ago. Without hesitation, we would begin our exploration. After we cracked open the first section of this platform, it appeared to be completely empty and hollow, devoid of any actual mechanoids, except for some turrets. Though in the far corner of the room, there were still many mech vats that appeared to be online and or operational. Though we don't currently see any mechs, if we get a little bit close to these vats, I think we'll find what we're hoping not to find. So my immediate game plan for this was to stay the hell away from those. As you can see immediately after, in another section of the platform, I completely failed this task, awakening a Lancer. Thankfully, it seems to be just the one. As we continued further, though, we would try to destroy the fortified walls instead of opening up the blast doors. And even with the growth vats being completely avoided, some parts of this platform were crawling with some mean machines, and by that I mean murderous mechs. Eventually, though, this facility was completely cleared, and unfortunately, there was no gravtech here, which is going to be a big pain in the ass because that was a lot of work, and there's 2 more to go. We're gonna have to give our people some time to heal and also to enjoy some recreational activities so that they don't go berserk. Given this, it seems like we're going to be here for quite some time. So we started planting rice for food so we don't have to hunt any infected animals, and we also started planting herbal medicine as we're running quite low. Also during this time, I realized that apparently Nathan is a lady. We had no idea, as this is the first time that we've seen her without her vac helmet on. Pretty cool. After a while, though, we were ready to try to tackle the next orbital platform area, and we're actually going to be bringing batteries and our turrets from the ship, as well as building some barricades out of slate that was in the area. And the reason for this is we almost got killed in the last one. We got very injured, and I want to try to maybe go in and lead the mechs outside where our turrets could handle them for us. No doubt it's going to take us an incredibly long time and a lot of work to find this grav core that we're looking for. Or so I thought. For you see, after an excruciatingly long amount of time of blasting at these fortified walls, we found the ancient engine containing the core that we were after, as well as a large force of mechanoids protecting it, no doubt. The good news? We don't have to search any more of these platforms for it, as we found it. The bad news is we have opened up a very large can of mechanical worms that were super pissed off. Surprisingly, the mechanoids weren't all that difficult to defeat. It was mostly the fact that they were catching us on fire, which, yeah, it hurt a little bit, and Woody almost burned to death, but hey, everyone else was fine. We killed the mechs, and now we were free to take that core. A job well done. Mission complete. With this core, we are one step closer to defeating the mechive once and for all. Sure, we were only a couple of hours out of Woody bleeding to death from some of his injuries, and sure, some of his burns got a minor infection, but in the end he survived. You see, we in the business call that a win-win. Now that we've got what we come here for, there's really no point in neutralizing any of the other threats, and besides, the one mech platform that we landed right next to has plenty of items like mech slag chunks and stuff like that that we can actually use to create steel, and a lot of it, and there's plenty of other ruins in the area that we can deconstruct, and all this to say we're using these resources, refurbishing them, and reusing them to expand our ship. Of course, though, there's no reason for us not to use the tech that we've been collecting, so we started building some extenders onto it once more again, and this time we actually ended up doubling what we originally started with in terms of our ship's building capacity. We went from 500 to 1,000. The mechanoid's bane has been in need of an upgrade desperately for quite some time now. Not only has the ship been incredibly cramped for the last 2 episodes, but it also has really needed some weapons, as we previously mentioned. And so, as you can see, we definitely have a lot more room now. I've actually added our kitchen into the freezer and food storage area. That way we save a lot of space there. We have a small little table dining room kind of area. We have 2 new residential areas, and we have a great great big hallway right in the middle near our extender that we're actually going to be using for storage. This way, people don't get the debuff of seeing the ugly items we're storing, and they also have plenty of room to move around. Perhaps most importantly of all, though, are the 12, yes 12, brand new turrets that have been added to the ship with 6 on each side. This is the very beginning of our gunship. We also finally completed our research into the multi-analyzer, which, to be honest with you, I almost completely forgot about us starting since it takes quite some time. Unfortunately, as it stands right now, we don't have the gold nor plasteel that we need to actually create one, so we'll have to build one later. Fine by me though, as I think we've overstayed our welcome in this area. Probably for the best that we leave right away before we have any raids starting to come here. Besides, there's more tech to collect. Landing now in a rather large valley in between 2 glaciers. Within this valley is a mechanoid relay that is protected by a handful of stabilizers, each one protected by a couple of mechanoids. This should be pretty easy, I'd say. All we gotta do is creep up on them while they're sleeping and slit their metaphorical throats. Once these little metal fellows were decommissioned, Sissy, our captain, was free to begin hacking all of the stabilizers. Funny enough, there really wasn't all that much to mention here, as the mechs were easily defeated and these were easily hacked. It just took a little bit of time. This might actually be the easiest collection of grav tech that we've had thus far. All we gotta do now is wait some odd hours for the relay to destabilize and we're good. While we're waiting, we also decided to have Woody go out with his pockets full of rice to try to tame some of the avians. And he actually ended up taming a crow. Ah, such a beautiful ebony-colored little fellow. Ah, welcome aboard, little fella. We'll let you be our honorary first mate or something. I don't know. I don't really care either. I've been wanting to tame one of these since I heard about the DLC. Now then, with the relay finally destabilized, we were good to destroy it and to get the tech that we had come here to salvage. But it would seem that the relay has released some type of distress signal and we're now being attacked by only a couple of scythers. Normally, a couple of scythers is hardly a threat to worry about anyways, but especially now with the ship's brand new weapon systems, these types of mechs were no concern at all, and we easily finished them off. Since there's just so darn many mechanoid corpses in this little valley now, we thought maybe building a machining table and starting to shred them for resources would be a splendid idea, so of course that's exactly what we started doing. I just hate for good steel to go to waste, you know? Since we're going to be in the area for a while here to collect some resources as well as food, we're going to start with the research of fishing. We, of course, would spend a good bit of time hunting some animals for more food and also cutting down plenty of trees to turn and to refine into chem fuel, yada yada. You've seen this 1,000 times by this point. But something you probably weren't expecting? Coleman told Sissy that it's not working out. Yes, indeed, the filthy cheater with a spouse on the side just broke our captain's heart. You want my opinion on the matter? I think that Sissy was starting to catch on to the fact that he was already married to somebody else. And I think she's too damn good for him anyway. She can do better. Other than the romantic relationships of some of our crew, though, we finally finished up research into fishing, which is an absolutely great alternative to hunting. Now, I'm not opposed to it, of course. We've been doing plenty of it, but we've already killed a lot of the passive animals in the area that wouldn't try to kill us for shooting at them, so this is another good protein source. Before we leave the area, though, to go out on our next mission and quest, I want to plant a humongous field of cotton, and the reason for that is because we are going to collect all that cloth and we are going to try to sell it to make a lot of money so we can get a lot of different items, like the items that we need to make a multi-analyzer, stuff like that. Now, some of you with an eagle eye and a knack for spotting things may have seen that in many of the clips throughout this episode, we keep getting raids, or you're probably hearing the noise for raids. Now, we are actually getting attacked, and it's from mechanoids, but it's not actually where the ship is. It's back at the asteroid base. It seems that the mechive still thinks that we're at this location, and they continue over and over and over sending attacks here. I actually am not all that sure how we're going to take back the asteroid with all these mechanoids, but we'll find a way, I'm sure. Now, in all truth, the reason that we don't keep getting attacked by mechanoids at the ship is because they keep getting sent to the asteroid base. Is this cheating? Probably, but I didn't do it on purpose, it just kinda happened. They've also destroyed our grav anchor, but for whatever reason, even without the anchor, it looks like we're still able to return and to check in on the base, so I guess that might be a bit of an exploit too, but either way, it's a good thing. Well, kinda, I guess. We're pretty far off from being able to take back the base though, so we're going to immediately start working on some research into better turrets. In this particular case, auto-cannon turrets. To begin, we're starting with gas operation, which is actually the only research we need before we can start working on autocannons. Hopefully, once completing that research, we can continue on creating some pretty powerful weapons to turn the ship into a true gunship, one that is mighty and big and can take down any of our enemies with ease. That's the idea, at least. While we were waiting on our crops to become harvestable, we also started working on some new weapons, not for the ship, but for our crewmates. These are EMP launchers, and though they took up a good bit of steel and of course components, I think they're going to be absolutely crucial for our future missions. If you're familiar with RimWorld, I'm sure you know how they work, but a brief description is this little bad boy can't do any damage to anyone, but against mechanoids as well as any other mechanical enemies, it can stun them for a brief period of time. Useful seeing how we've been taking on a lot of turrets as well as drones lately. After this, and after waiting a very long time, our cloth was ready to be harvested, just in time, I might add, as a mighty snow started in the valley. I'm gonna level with you, I think we might have grown a little bit too much. You know what? There's no such thing. We had so much cloth, in fact, that we were just throwing it on the ground at this point, and I actually got tired of trying to bring it all inside, and I thought building some beacons outside was a better solution. Thanks to doing a little bit of business with an orbital trader, we got the items that we needed for our multi-analyzer, and we also bought ourselves a good bit of steel and components as well for any future projects. Even though we're not currently working on any projects that require the multi-analyzer, I thought it'd be a good idea to just go ahead and build it so that we have it and we don't end up, using the resources somewhere else by accident, and we'll just keep it shut off until we need it. We finished up gas operations though, and it was time for us to begin educating ourselves in the wild, wonderful world of autocannons. The crew was getting a little bit tired of all these blizzards coming into the valley though, so we decided to move on to our next location. We're actually going to be flying to the Sky Gate, the one that we got intel about from the terminal at the reactor city very early on in this episode. I don't blame you if you don't remember. There's actually no grav tech there, but there is a possibility we might find some other useful items. We ended up docking with the station, and even from initial viewings, there don't appear to be any mechanoids or pirates or anything like that. Initially, that is. It would be idiotic and silly to think that they're just going to come out and announce themselves. No, if we want to find any enemies, something tells me they're probably within. We began hacking one of the main blast doors and were immediately met with gunfire. This feels kind of like deja vu. There were a couple of turrets in there trying to blast us, but this time we came prepared. The perfect opportunity to test out our EMP launcher. And I think you'll be happy to know that the captain was having great success stunning these turrets as everyone else pelted them with bullets, finally destroying both of them. Once the automated turrets were gone, we started making our way throughout the beginnings of the facility here at the station, and we ended up coming upon a room full of cryo-sleep caskets. Now, I think we have enough problems at the moment, so I think we're going to wait to try to open any of these once we've cleared the station of other threats. We have so many weapons on the ship, I wanted to try to convince some of the sentry drones to follow us outside, but unfortunately their programming seems to not allow them to leave the inside of the station that they're defending for our ship to just flambaste them with bullets. So it looks like we're gonna have to be on our own here. That was quite alright though, as we were indeed taking a bit of a beating, but we were handling them just fine. Now, the hunter drones were a bit more concerning for us, but so far so good. We were looking for this treasure that we had heard that the station might contain, and we found a pollock seed as well as some grav light panels, but if it doesn't get any better than that, I'm gonna be pretty pissed off. The reason I say that is because many of our crew are seriously injured, very weak and very slow, to the point that Nathan is having to lead the squad throughout the remainder of the station. And we just about lost Nathan and this tiny squad as well when I didn't notice another hunter drone coming right for us, and even when I did, we were still a bit too slow to escape it. But thanks to the power of teamwork, thus far we haven't had any casualties. Captain Sissy was hacking some of the security terminals and had managed to disable some of the turrets throughout the station, as well as open up a few doors per the usual, which was a huge help since most things were trying to kill us. It's a shame that we couldn't reprogram one of these little sentry drones, as I wouldn't mind having the little Cyclops looking fella on board our ship. Oh well. We continued our exploration throughout the Skygate space station, and we really didn't find all that much. We found a couple of corpses in some broken transport pods, and we also found a little bit of silver. So I suppose the real treasure was just going to be the friends we made along the way for the most part. To be honest with you, I would be tempted to make a station like this our home if we couldn't take back the asteroid, or even just do it and then take back the asteroid later on. Let me know what you guys think about that. I probably won't use this station, but I think there are plenty more in orbit around the planet. Surely one of them would be sufficient. Mostly just as an operating base, somewhere we can keep many of our colonists when they're not on the ship on missions, and also, of course, somewhere to dock the ship. Now then, the real treasure. These cryosleep caskets, we would crack them open, and quite a few people would actually pop out of them, and we would start slaughtering them. But they also had plenty of gold and plasteel, and of course their weapons along with them, so maybe this is the treasure we were looking for all along. Either way, I think this stuff is going to help us out quite a bit with our mission of taking down the mechive. And as will this nice young lady, assuming she's willing to join us, that is. I would hope so, as the rest of her crew have fallen to our many bullets and look more like Swiss cheese at the moment. Perhaps she'd be interested in joining a new crew. Our crew. In the meantime, since we're not going to be staying here at this station, we started deconstructing anything useful, as we always do by this point. Wood, steel, yada yada yada. I'm not trying to bore you to death, okay? But we couldn't bring ourselves to deconstruct some things like these wooden sculptures. These are from ancient times, no doubt, and we'd hate to waste them. As a matter of fact, we would simply end up relocating many items like couches and chairs, which are a little bit more comfortable than the metal and stone stools that we've been using thus far. We would also get ourselves a nice big mega screen television, keeping us nice and entertained while we're flying through the stars. You know what? I guess this station wasn't so useless after all, was it? We opened up a couple remaining cryosleep caskets. The crew, once again, not very friendly. We ended up having to kill them, and we were almost done here. They also had some mining charges, which we were all too familiar with by this point, and we put them inside of our ship next to everyone's beds. But I put some fire foam poppers in there, so it's safe. Maybe. We then ended up getting our very first raid of pirates since we were on our asteroid last episode, and there were numerous of these pirates. Looks like we won't have to worry about those charges being inside our ship though, as we're going to try to use them as a trap. The station crewmate Mitsuya actually joined us just in time for the fight. It'll be nice to have a helping hand. We're going to need all the help we can get. We've gotten a little bit too comfortable fighting machines. I think that we've forgotten just how ruthless humans can be. As they approached, we started igniting the charges, but unfortunately, due to the long fuses, they wouldn't even damage any of the pirates by the time they exploded. The pirates came near our crew, and as we were trying to make a retreat out away from the ship, tragedy struck. Our captain had been shot right between the eyes, busting her visor and killing her instantly. We had no time to react to this though, as the battle was still ongoing. We would finish off the pirates though, and those who remained alive, except for one of them, would end up being taken as our prisoners, which is much better than they deserve. The corpse of our captain, our friend, Sissy, lie motionless in the low gravity. She's gone. The battle was won. But at what cost? We built a steel sarcophagus to bury her in for the time being. Knowing her, she would want to be buried here forevermore. As they say, a captain always goes down with their ship. The art engraved on the sarcophagus was a representation of Sissy giving up under stress as a last step. Perhaps showing her dedication to our cause and only given up when her life was taken from her. We held a funeral for her, with Woody being the one to give her eulogy. We found that it would be fitting. He is the captain now, after all. Not to worry, my friend. Though you live in her grand shadow, I'm sure you will make the captain proud. After laying our friend to rest, we finally ended up finishing the research into autocannon turrets. These would have come in mighty handy, just a little bit of go, but that's fine. Thanks to all the resources like plasteel that we got aboard the station from all the items we deconstructed, we could easily finish up 2 brand new autocannon turrets onto the front of our gunship. Now, I know, it ain't much, but it is a pretty good start, I would say. We have a lot more to do and to add before we can use it to its full capacity. But before we go today, we have a good name for our pet crow that we tamed, with that being Edgar Allan Crow. Now, I asked you guys in a post on the community tab of the channel for some names for this little fella as I was playing along, and this is the name we got from our good friend Jagawo1683, so thank you ever so much. Well, Edgar Allan Crow, we came to this station a full crew, and now we leave without our original captain. Where will our adventures take us next? I suppose we'll have to see, as there is much more grav tech to collect and many more enemies to face. Until next time. Greetings and salutations, my spacefaring compadres, and welcome back to yet another episode of RimWorld Odyssey, where we are still recovering currently from the fight we had with some pirates here at the great big abandoned sky gate in the, well, sky. And we're also still recovering from the loss of our captain. But once we were healed up and recovered enough to continue piloting the ship, it was time for us to go out on a hunt for the fugitive that the Outlanders had offered us some gravtech for. Based on initial reports, it would seem that he isn't too far from an asteroid, so I'm thinking that we're going to land there first and foremost, and we'll probably use it as something of a staging ground. Besides, we don't want to show our hand too quickly, nor do we want to rush into yet another battle after the devastating loss that we've all just faced. Close enough to them to give us plenty of prep time, but just far away enough for them not to think that we're going to be coming there, still giving us the element of surprise, I might add. This will also allow us additional time to begin collecting some resources from the asteroid from crashed ship chunks, as well as beginning to do a bit of research into shuttles. Now, I don't think we'll be able to use the shuttle against this fugitive, but it will be a good thing to go ahead and get started on it. A shuttle is going to be absolutely perfect for our more, should we say, stealthy missions, perhaps, where we're not going to be landing our great big gunship and going in guns blazing. Speaking of which, we are currently using many of the resources that we've collected and that we currently have in storage to make some large and deadly additions onto the back of the ship. As you can see, we're going to be adding onto the left and right side, just on the outside of the crew cabins, shifting our 2 mini turrets on each side out just a little bit further, giving them a better range around the ship, and also adding in an autocannon on each side as well. But obviously, other than our new weapon systems, we are also adding in 2 very large rooms. As you can see on the right here, we are going to have a recreational area for all of our spacefaring crew to enjoy, and this will also give us a lot more room for storage and anything else realistically that we want to put in its place, where we used to have the chess table and yada yada yada. And these new types of recreation will hopefully keep people from going insane or getting cabin cabin fever if they're in the ship for too long. In the brand new western wing of the ship, we also have something of a makeshift brig. Now, this can also double as a barracks, of course, if we don't have any prisoners, and we also have an overflowing population of crew, so basically the prisoners that we recruit while out on our missions, they can stay here even after they decide to join us. It's not exactly as nice as their own little designated crew cabin, but it's better than nothing. And we'll even get to see it utilized right away for Bentley and Grump, the two pirates who actually were part of the killing of our captain, but as we said last episode, you know, she always believed in second chances, so we've allowed them to join us after being rehabilitated. Besides, they would help us out quite a bit, I feel, with taking down this fugitive and this fugitive's damn dirty crew. We'll be using quite a few mining charges, and once we had those stashed aboard the ship, I believe, Edgar Allan Crow, we are ready. Well, it would seem that we've arrived, but we're not the only ones that are aware of our presence here. The crew of the fugitive seemed to have spotted us and rushed back into the facility. When landing, we chose our spot very carefully, as we had lined the side of the ship with all our turrets up. That way anything that gets near will be obliterated and eviscerated. We had hoped that they might come out and try to attack us so that we could use the ship, but it looks like they're gonna make us come in after them. They appear to be smarter than we initially gave them credit for. We had planned on using some demolition charges to bust through these doors, surprising them, catching them off guard, and giving us the upper hand. Our other crew members are taking cover and taking point, just in case, setting up a perimeter. The charges were prepped and we were ready, but all of a sudden, the fugitive busts through the door, but was completely caught off guard by us, shocked and in a panic, rushing all around the room. Perhaps he wasn't so smart after all. With the fugitive dead, though, it was time for us to move on to the rest of his crew, who were no doubt not all that tickled that we had just killed their boss. Detonating our charges and catching them by surprise as well, squirming and squealing and writhing around like little hogs. We began chasing down the one remaining crew member through the facility. Going by the name of Fitz, we lit him on fire. As he was running around in pain, on fire from the oxygen inside of the facility, we smacked him to the ground with the butt of our rifle, of course, but that type of dedication and persistence for survival, we could really use that in our crew, we thought to ourselves, so we started tending to his wounds. Besides, it's not like Fitz has one anymore. We started exploring the station after taking out what remained of the crew members, and we started encountering some turrets, blast doors, nothing out of the usual, I suppose you could say. We found a few useful items like advanced components and things of that sort. And even though this station is no doubt chock full of even more useful items and resources, such as the ones that we've currently been finding, we decided to not continue adventuring throughout it, trying to discover more, given the recent loss of our captain and the fact that we're already injured from having to fight some of its defensive systems like its turrets and also the fugitives, of course. When you play too risky, sometimes you end up losing it all, and that is not what we're here for. Besides, the Outlanders had already paid us in the grav core that they owed us for killing the fugitives, so we have all we really came here for, truly. And I'm quite glad we received it, as we would immediately begin using it for an orbital scanner that will allow us to detect orbital objects, possibly even the mechive that we're searching for, as well as other things that may aid us in our mission, such as some plasteel asteroids and things of that sort. With our scanner constructed, though, the crew would quickly enjoy a very peaceful dinner before going back out into the abandoned station to do some deconstructing. Obviously, we're going to be taking all the useful resources we can without getting into any unknown areas that might get us injured. Again, and we have very little interest in actually exploring the rest of the station. We're just going to be taking what we can from the areas we know are safe. We ended up finishing our research into shuttle technology shortly thereafter. The only issue is, as you can see in the description here, we can't actually build an engine for a shuttle ourselves. However, it does appear that we'll be able to salvage one, or perhaps even be able to purchase one from an orbital trader. So it looks like our stealthy missions are going to be on hold, at least for the time being. Our next research project was going to be advanced grav tech, and the reason for this is because with advanced grav tech we can actually build a signal jammer, which is absolutely crucial for approaching the mechive station in orbit without being torn to shreds from its defensive systems. The only problem is we also need to do fabrication research before we can do that, so that's where we're starting for now. As we're getting into this extensive research, we would also end up detecting the signature of yet another grav core at an abandoned orbital platform, so it looks like that's going to be our next destination. First and foremost though, Fitz here has a pretty bad infection in his right arm, and we desperately would prefer our newest crewmate, or possible crewmate, to have both of his arms, and luckily it looks like he's going to get immunity just in time. Before we fly off to get our next grav core though, our weapon systems that we've added onto the ship can be extremely taxing on the power, so we've actually decided to add 2 solar panels onto the front of the ship to help us ease in the load and lighten the burden just a little bit. I would have built more chem fuel generators, but by this point it's getting very hard to keep up with the demand refining fuel for the tanks as well as the generators, which, as you can see here, is kind of causing us to not be able to fly all the way to this orbital platform where our next grav core lies. Due to this, we're actually going to be traveling back to the planet's surface to an ancient garrison, some type of military installation, I believe, that is actually below the orbital platform, allowing us to fly from there to the platform after a bit of time. It was a bit tricky trying to find a place to land our ship in this rough and rugged jungle terrain. The large, dull military installation was very intimidating and foreboding. The land was littered with ancient military technology and weaponry like old artillery, long since rusted and eroded away, no use to us now. On the contrary though, the actual installation and whatever it contains within might be very useful to us. Immediately as we were exploring, we were finding several crates of packaged survival meals. As expected, there were still many ancient defenses that were working properly, so we had to bust through a few fortified walls. It took quite a while, but we did manage it, and we even ended up finding a few stashes of mortar shells. Might come in handy if we need to detonate them. Even more useful though, we found a very large armory with quite a few weapons still intact, a few assault rifles and pistols and things of that sort. If we don't end up using these, we could always sell them for profit. We would also discover a room with about 3 or so cryo-sleep caskets, but of course we're going to save that for the end, as we don't want to have to deal with the devil we don't know while dealing with the devil we do know, which just so happens to be Sentry and Hunter drones, no less. Yes, I suppose it should come as no surprise that an ancient military installation of all places would have some pretty good defenses, as well as some of the best treasures. Of course, we would find an ancient safe, and within it we found some death rest serum. Now, we have no plans of using this serum for ourselves, but again, we can make a good bit of money off of it, which of course is always useful. Now, with that taken care of, we decided to crack open the cryo sleep caskets, and as one might imagine, some very unhappy campers popped out, and we would have to deal with them. It wasn't all bad though, because all 3 of them were incapacitated, meaning we could take their wonderful armor without risking it becoming tainted. This armor was actually much better than vac suits, as I'm sure you could guess, being much more protective and much more versatile. No doubt it'll come in handy in many of our little scuffles, but especially against the mechive once we found it. We then did the usual song and dance of hauling in any weapons, items, and or materials that we would find useful, of course trying to avoid the defenses as much as possible. We could take them out, but I don't know, I'm lazy. After a while though, we would be able to welcome Fitz with open arms onto the team. He would have been really useful helping us clear this place out, but better late than never, old pal. Not to worry though, as he was just in time to help us add on to the ship once more. We're actually going to be adding on some more mini turrets to the front of the ship, kind of going in the direction of a gunship, but that's really not the important part here now, is it? We're actually going to be adding in some new solar panels for additional power generation, and most importantly, a shuttle bay, as you can see. I mean, yeah, okay, we don't actually have a shuttle at this time though, and it's going to be a lot cooler when we do, but basically this is an area that is going to be exposed to the vacuum with no roof, so the shuttle can dock and undock and go out on missions from the main gunship, carrying any of our armed crew that it so chooses. After a couple more days, we managed to recruit Puppy, who was part of the folks in the ancient cryo-sleep caskets who thought they were going to kill us. Yeah, you remember them, they're all dead, except for Puppy, who's our friend now. After recruiting him though, we then got some interesting news. Coleman apparently started flirting with Mitsuya and is now having an affair with her, just as he did with the captain. It seems that he's never going to beat these slut allegations, huh? Listen, I'm no one to shame, but by this point, my god, he's basically become the ship doorknob. Whatever. Anyways, I noticed that we had accidentally trapped a beautiful bird on the inside of our shuttle bay, a macaw, I believe it is, and Captain Woody attempted to tame it, and now we have a macaw. Pretty sweet. Not only the perfect gorgeous companion for our spacefaring crew to enjoy the sight of as well as the company of, but also for Edgar Allan Crow as well. However, this macaw is going to need a name, and I would like for you fine folks to help me out with it if you wouldn't mind. Thank you in advance. Now, in the meantime, we're going to be doing some trading with a combat trader in orbit around the planet, selling off many of the weapons that we got from the military installation. An absolutely perfect timing, I might add. In exchange for these weapons, we would also end up getting a cataphract helmet as well as a shield belt for the captain himself, since he is our melee expert, of course. I felt that these were going to be much needed. Plus, I really don't want the travesty of losing yet another captain. Now then, my friends, our kitchen is completely stocked and filled to the brim with food. Our chem fuel tanks are fueled and ready to go, and I believe we are ready to launch to our next mission. We ended up arriving at the orbital platform, and upon initial viewings, I really couldn't tell if this was a station or what it was actually for. And it seems that most people have forgotten the purpose of it as well. Although, perhaps it was some type of transport hub or tourist destination, as I did end up spotting a crashed and somewhat salvageable shuttle. And with Coleman's expertise, I think we might be able to salvage the engine. Even though he's a bit promiscuous, he is still quite a good constructor. Ah, yes indeed, just what the doctor ordered. With this new engine from the salvage shuttle, we would be able to build our very own. Finally! Now we can finally go on those stealth missions, or if our ship is attacked and completely overrun by mechanoids, we could actually make an escape. That'll never happen, though. Hopefully. Anywho's though, we started exploring the platform, going through the fortified walls on the sides, attempting to avoid the hallways where all the turrets were that wanted to turn us into Swiss cheese, as we always do. You know we're not ones to follow the rules. So we took the L, going about things very slowly in the name of safety. Eventually though, after a bit more exploration, we ended up finding the ancient GravTech engine that has the core we're looking for. We let our captain take the lead here, seeing how he has the best armor and even a shield that we had given him. And I must say that his shield came in mighty handy here, as he basically took no damage from all the bullets and everything that he was hit with. Once we cleaned out all the automatic defenses, it was time for us to take what we came here for. Yet another sweet, succulent grav core, baby. With that finally completed, we basically just did the usual deconstruction, using crafting, wooden furniture for fuel, steel, all the other stuff that you've heard me yap about 1,000 times by this point. However, something that might tickle your fancy is that we finally finished our research into fabrication, and we can now finally begin working on advanced grav tech. Oh, mama. About damn time, isn't it? That's what I was thinking too. While we're working on that research, we're gonna crack open a couple more cryosleep pods. Of course, the inhabitants were not all that excited to see us for whatever reason, so we killed one, and the other was alive, so we stripped them and let them crawl around out in the vacuum of space and suffer, and we put their armor on. On the bright side, hear me out, we couldn't hear them screaming because there was no sound in space. So, you know, I ended up giving this sweet armor to Dragon since he too is one of our melee experts. Just as the captain, I felt that the two of them need to be readily protected since they get up close and personal with all the sharp weapons. Now the bad news is, of course, Dragon though wouldn't have a shield belt as the captain had, so we had to find a solution to that. Thankfully, as we were doing a bit of preemptive fire control around our turrets once they start getting into some shootouts, of course, we had a trader in orbit who was willing to trade us a armor skin gland. Now, it's not a shield, but it's the best that we could do given the circumstances. We quickly bought it along with some books, and we even had Coleman install it onto Dragon shortly thereafter. The surgery went off without any issues, and now we have a Neanderthal in space who still carries around a spear who has a cybernetically enhanced skin that can turn hard at a moment's notice. He's basically a walking tank. God, I love RimWorld. A bit of time later, and our orbital scanner had picked up the coordinates of some debris and wreckage. Now, there doesn't appear to be any grav tech there, but there could be some other useful items to aid us in our mission and journey, and while we're waiting to scan for other grav tech, we might as well, right? But before heading over there, we did end up finishing our research into advanced grav tech, and we are now able, finally, to build our very first, well, the only one we should need, signal jammer. Not only allowing us to enter the area of the mechive once found, but many other installations and satellites in orbit that have defenses. This is a giant leap forward for us. Some other incredible tech we would end up building is a gravtech power cell. This passively generates power from the gravtech engine itself. It literally requires nothing at all from us, and it even generates more power than a chem-fuel generator. Now, the downside is you have to have a grav core, and that was our last one, but getting a few of these is really a game changer once we do so. Now, with all of our new tech in hand, though, we would begin heading towards the wreckage. Upon our initial landing, this place was absolutely massive. It's hard to say exactly what this wreckage is from, maybe some type of giant starship, or perhaps even a failed city in the skies. Either way, though, no doubt there's plenty of items here. But if we want these useful resources and items, we're gonna have to take it from a bunch of salvagers and scavengers. Funny enough, though, after incapacitating one of them, it didn't seem like it was going to be all that hard. We actually just went back inside the ship as our enemies stepped right into the field of fire of all our turrets. Now, one of them had some grenades and started doing some damage to our weapon systems, and of course they would have been able to handle it on their own, but I didn't feel like having to repair and replace every single one of them, so we stepped in to help a little. As for the last remaining one, the captain bashed him in the head with his axe until he collapsed, and then we stripped him, allowing nature to take its course. Then, of course, now that the battle is finished, we're going to start doing some minor repairs to the ship's defenses. Sure, we had to replace a solar panel and a mini turret or two, but I was actually pretty impressed with how well it handled the situation. But note to self in the future, if they have anything explosive, maybe don't let the ship handle it. We would then end up spending a good deal of time searching all throughout the wreckage, finding many great treasures such as advanced components, hyperweave, and even glitter world medicine. Also a tornado generator. I'm kind of curious if this would even work in space, but I think we should save it in case we need it. In one of these crates, we ended up finding some type of map. Apparently, it has a label and a diagram for Northern Hyora something and contains some kind of survey of an area. I'm not very intelligent, so I'm just gonna let the crew read it. A couple days of deciphering this map later, and we finally figured out the location that it was pointing to. Looks like whoever owned this map had lost a friend to an infamous company of mercenaries on the planet's surface. Apparently these mercenaries have a nice military facility as a base and also have a unique weapon or two. Maybe we could head down there and take care of this little mercenary problem ourselves. We landed the ship just next to the facility with our turrets aimed right at their entranceways. This was a well-fortified military base. As soon as we stepped off the ship, the mercenaries caught us by surprise, rushing out of their facility and firing their weapons at us. Thanks to the weapons of the gunship, though, most of them would be distracted as we could gang up, picking them off one by one. Though it must be said that this was still no easy task. With superior armor and a dash of ruthlessness, these mercenaries were dangerous. Although not all of these ruthless bastards had superior armor, so we would target those weaker ones first and foremost, hopefully killing the morale of the others. As we were fighting the larger group of mercenaries to the south, another one of them would attempt to flank us from the north along with one of their filthy turrets. Thanks to the power of teamwork and a handful of lead projectiles, we would easily put him down as well as this stupid turret, and the battle was finally over. But along with our monumentous, legendary victory against this mercenary group, we also ended up getting a legendary bolt-action rifle as well. Known as the Cursed Phantom, it apparently has a quick reload trait. Nothing too spectacular, but it would be pretty good for a sniper, I suppose. Speaking of which, since Coleman here has a pretty damn good shooting skill, not the best, but he's only one of our colonists who doesn't have any injuries to either of his arms, making him our best shot by this point, we ended up letting him have it. Yes, he might be a down, dirty, no good, filthy cheater, but he has been significantly increasing his shooting skill for quite some time, so I guess it's worth it. Once again, we started exploring the facility, finding plenty of components and steel caches, a few advanced components, yada 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 yada, all that same shit. I'm not gonna bore you with it, except I'm probably boring you right now by talking about it. How about something interesting instead? Like the fact that we've been researching rocket swarm launchers for actually quite some time. The clip that you're looking at right now is from many a day ago in-game because, well, I actually forgot to mention that we were working on it. We've been working on it for quite some time now, and we're almost finished with it. The clip that you're looking at is from many clips behind. But as we're finishing that up, we would end up getting the signature detected of yet another grav core. Surely by this point we must be getting close to the mechive, right? I thought so too. So, before we go out on this mission, which we'll probably save for next episode, I think we need to come up with a plan of attack. The plan in question, I am going to soup up this ship to be an absolute behemoth powerhouse that will be able to destroy any mechanoid that even gets close enough to sniff us a few miles out. Some other metaphor that works better than what I just said. Basically, we're going to turn it to a great big beautiful gunship, which we've kind of already started doing. The best way I found to do this right off the bat was replacing many of our mini turrets with autocannons. However, we would also end up finishing up that rocket swarm launcher research, which means we can now build a couple of those bad boys as well. Again, replacing a couple of our mini turrets with him, but I think it's more than a fair trade-off, as these are going to be absolutely crucial once we get to the mechive, as well as really anywhere else that we want to bomb. Now, in case you're unfamiliar with the rocket swarm launchers, they are wonderful. They're amazing, they have a lot of power, they're very destructive, but there is one little problem. You'll notice I have a door on each side, not only so we can access our weapon systems better to repair them easier, but also so we can launch our rockets, as they have to be done manually. Even so, though, these are a brand new, very powerful weapon in our arsenal, and again, I think they are going to be very useful against any upcoming threats that we will be facing. And with that, my friends, our grav ship is truly now a proper gunship. There's plenty of room for us to add on many more weapons, but I think we've officially at least achieved the title this episode. And with that, my friends, we are ready to face anything that comes our way. Until next time. Hello and welcome back, my cosmic companions, to yet another episode of RimWorld Odyssey. At the moment, we're still landed at the ancient military facility that the mercenaries had taken over that we killed last episode. But today, my friends, we are going to be tracking down and eradicating the mechive that has been plaguing this solar system for far too long. Mark my words. Helping us accomplish this are the generous amounts of autocannons and rocket swarm launchers that we added to our grav ship last episode, truly turning it into a gunship. We've currently zeroed in on the position of a frozen terraformer that apparently has the energy signatures of a grav core that is most likely powering it, and it's not all that far away. I suppose it's time that we headed in that direction. Well, I suppose this is the place, eh? Icy, frozen, and pretty uncomfortable for the most part. At the center of it all, a large glacier-like structure. It would seem that the malfunctioning terraformer has encased itself in a mountain of solid ice. Well, it's not going to mine itself out of there, so I suppose we shouldn't waste any time, and we'll just get started on a little bit of excavation, eh? We had set up 3 separate tunnels, that way we could cover as much ground as humanly possible when Coleman eventually struck a fortified wall. Call it a hunch, but I think the terraformer's inside there. Instead of deciding to look for a door, we ended up making our own. Now that this place is opened up, we can start looking around. If you believe it, there was a lot of ice, but there were also a lot of other things, like a medicine pallet, as well as an ancient safe. And within the safe, an anti-grain warhead. Oh mama, it would seem we've hit the lottery with this one. This is a special tool that'll help us later. For now though, we're going to put it on the ship. We began exploring the facility, and as expected, we found a frozen little drone sentry bot, and we blasted it into oblivion. Once he was dead, we started exploring a bit more, during which time, under the icy mountain, we would find the malfunctioning terraformer. Now all we had to do was get rid of the hunter drone, the swarm drones, and also the turret inside, which was a bit easier said than done, but we did do it. Now comes an epic beatdown for the terraformer itself. Once destroyed, we could finally reap our reward of the beautiful grav core. Ooh la la. We would have one team take it back to the ship so we could ensure that it was properly protected and within our care at any given moment, while the rest of the team started adventuring throughout the icy facility a bit more, as is basically standard procedure with all of these places by this point. During this exploration, though, we actually encountered many large ice walls, marking the very first time that we started using these demolition charges for their intended purpose. Surprisingly, they were actually very useful for their intended purpose and actually helped us end up finding several gravlight panels tucked away in some containers. These will be perfect for building onto the ship furthermore. We would continue exploring throughout the rest of this facility, which actually ended up being much smaller than we thought it would be. Although we found quite a few useful things, there wasn't much of note, I'm afraid. However, while we're waiting for our engine to cool down, which didn't seem to take all that long in temperatures like these, we might as well start mining out a few resources like compacted machinery and steel while we're here. We would also end up having a bulk goods trader stop in near the ship who we decided to trade with and even buy a reinforced barrel from because, well, we need something to fire our new anti-grain warhead as well as a few of the other mortar shells that we had gotten recently out of. While we were scanning for more grav core energy signatures, we ended up picking up the signal of a satellite in orbit that appears to be abandoned for the most part, as we don't detect any actual faction signatures or call signs, so we decided to head that up there to see what it held within. Upon our arrival to the satellite, it appeared to be a spherically shaped large station of sorts. Though there were no living organisms aboard, the place was not completely devoid of movement. It was large, vast, and well defended by many a turret. Uranium slug turrets, no less, I might add. Not very easy to defeat, I'll say, as... Whoa! Whoa! What was that? Oh! Hello there, Grump. Thank you very much. I suppose those launchers were worth the wait after all last episode, eh? Now, with the slug turret on this side completely destroyed, we were free to start our exploration and excavation of the satellite, I might add. And indeed, I shall add it, because we started excavating a great big sealed crate, and out popped a great big machine, oddly enough. It would seem this large machine just so happens to be a grav ship shield generator. Exactly what we needed for our ship, I'd say. And now we don't have to waste resources building our own. As we continued moving all throughout the inner workings of the satellite, the place was completely filled with unstable fuel nodes. But even with them exploding, thankfully, due to the lack of oxygen, the flames went out very quickly, causing very little damage to the surrounding satellite as well as our crew, most importantly. Even so, though, things were not exactly hunky-dory, as you might expect, because many of our crew were getting injured from the defensive drones on the inside. By the time it was said and done, though, we ended up finding many treasures like sentience catalysts, as well as yet another Archean seed, meaning that we can really terraform something now. But even after going throughout the entire satellite and taking what we wanted, we didn't decide to leave just yet. I really would hate to let all of these solar panels go to waste, as all of them seem to be functioning. Unfortunately, we can't reinstall them, so we'll just deconstruct them for their precious steel and components. Now, the other power generating sections of the satellite were filled with solar panels as well, but also more uranium slug turrets, which we would have to rush so that they didn't shoot every single one of us, killing any of us, eventually managing to defeat them as well, freeing us up to help ourselves to all the components in steel that we would like. And we decided to add some more research to our repertoire, being uranium slug turrets. I think they'll be a great addition to the ship. After experiencing the danger that they pose to us landing here at the satellite, especially from so far away, there was no way that we couldn't add them. If they were good enough to protect this satellite for however many years, since ancient times it would seem, and most of them still intact, I think they're good enough to protect us in the ship. Speaking of protection, though, it looks like we're going to need it, as a few groups of mechanoids have landed in the area, this time not on our old asteroid base, but on the actual satellite. And they've come for our blood. Thankfully, before they attack, they would be prepping for a few hours, trying to locate our position through GPS, I suppose, I'm not sure, but it would give us an opportunity to equip many of our EMP launchers, which was an absolute godsend, because as the Scythers started coming for us, the launchers would stun them, giving our ship's gun systems time to take them out. The biggest issue currently that the ship's systems, as well as we ourselves face, is getting overrun with too many all at once. But thankfully, these Scythers would be taken out one by one before that could happen, and we were victorious. Ah, more steel for the scrap heap. Poetic that our ship will be built from the corpses of mechanoids, being that it is the mechanoid's bane, of course. Ah, I'm a sucker for the little sentimental details, you know? And I'm not just talking out my ass either. We're actually going to be using the steel and whatnot that we got from those Scythers, as well as the satellite and solar panels, though, but to add onto the back of our ship, extending it out further. This time I didn't really have any exact goal in mind like I normally do with, oh, we're going to add turrets here or a recreation room here, that sort of thing. Realistically, other than just wanting a place to put the generator for the shield, that way it's not in the way, and in doing so I also freed up a lot of room. Essentially just putting in a spot for the generator, but also making a larger major cargo bay for many of our storage facilities, as well as a safer place I should add, to keep our demo charges. And this actually did free up a lot of room in the upper part of the ship as you get closer to the control room, as you can see with these before and afters. If I'm being honest with myself though, truthfully, maybe we just wanted a little extra room to play some space poker. Now, what's the difference between normal poker and space poker? You know what, actually, seems pretty self-explanatory, I guess. Nevertheless, I digress, as we have recently finished up research into uranium slug turrets, allowing us to now build as many as we like onto the ship. Once we get some uranium, that is. But whoa, Nelly, hold your horses, friendos, as it would seem that we've detected another grav core at a cave entrance on the planet's surface, and we're gonna start heading down there right away. Well, this looks like a wonderful place to die, but here's hoping it's not where we die. There's a great big gaping hole in the ground, and it seems to be the entrance to a much larger insectoid hive. The crew are going to draw straws to see who had to go into the damn thing first, but they didn't have enough time as the insectoids already started attacking our ship's weapons. The native insectoids were not happy at all about our presence and were very aggressive and territorial over the entire cave system. After we gave them a warm welcome, we started heading down into the cave entrance, as one does when there's danger. Of course you go head first into it, right? Okay. The insect lair. Sure is dark and moist down here. Given the opponents that we seem to be facing, we were sure to keep our flaming weaponry near us at all times. Mega spiders are the biggest threat that we feel we'll be dealing with, and thankfully they have no natural defense against fire. But unfortunately, since we were trying to break through the hive walls without detection, we wouldn't really be able to use our flaming weaponry, as this might alert some of the insectoids. Uh-oh, looks like that ended up happening anyways. We have a lot of insectoids tunneling up from under the ground. Thankfully, this little ambush of bugs seemed to be quite insignificant, but as we continued putting down more and more of them, the entire cave started to vibrate, almost as if, an entire army of bugs was rushing right for our position. Yeah, every single last insectoid knew that we were in the hive now. There was no way out other than through them. Immediately engaging our launchers, lighting these narrow hive passageways ablaze, choking on our own soot and smoke, as our exoskeletal enemies turned to a crisp before our very eyes. This was no easy fight. Taking on the entire hive with some fire was better than doing it without, but we still ended up becoming quite injured, not only from the bugs attacking us, but also a bit of negligence and a little bit of friendly fire from our own flames, I'm afraid. Because of this, we would end up splitting into two teams. Team 1 would tend to our wounded and to our injured and would start traversing out of the cave, trying to find their way back to the entrance to get back to the ship. Team 2, led by none other than Captain Woody, would continue throughout the rest of the hive until they finally would find, my good God, a hive queen, a behemoth beast of legendary renown. Luckily, it would seem that she has yet to spot us as we're hiding in the dark, but it won't be long before she detects us. So before that happens, we're going to take the opportunity to get our wounded out of the cave and back onto the ship before they become hive queen food. Uh-oh, looks like she spotted us. Worst of all, she snuck up on our squad, as it was quite dark in here. We weren't expecting her to be able to be that silent. With a bit of fire, bullets, and an axe to the face, we swiftly put her ass down. With the hive queen beaten and defeated, she is now at our mercy. But would she offer us mercy? I think not. We were astonished at ourselves. We had only heard tale of these legendary beasts, yet no stories of anyone ever killing one. I suppose no one's quite as crazy as we are to come into its lair. And with the monster slain, we shall now reap our reward of a grav core before we finally head back to the surface and ultimately back to the mechanoid's bane. I gotta say that having another grav core feels a whole lot better once you've washed all the bug blood off of your armor. Speaking of, ugh. These cannibalistic bugs aren't the only ones who will be eating good tonight, though. Funny, without their queen, they seem much more passive. You know, it would just be such a shame to let this giant beast go to waste like that, her meat and all her jelly? No, I think not. Not if we have anything to say about it. Coleman would start preparing her by butchering her and turning her into what jelly he could and meat that he could. Now, the jelly, of course, is absolutely delectable and sweet, and we would bake it into some little treats for the entire crew to celebrate our great victory here. Her meat, on the other hand, was very bitter and tough. Blech. So instead, we decided to start refining it into chem fuel. I know, I talked about earlier how we're using mechanoid corpses to build onto the ship. Now we're using our enemies to fuel our ship. Ugh, poetry at its best. With our newly acquired grav core, we would end up building yet another grav power cell, which I think we built last episode or the episode before our first one. Just know that I'm extremely tickled to have yet another. For quite a while, given the fact that we almost died down there, not only due to the fact that we almost burnt ourselves alive or inhaled too much smoke and choked ourselves to death, but also the fact that we had a bunch of bugs nibbling on our toesies and fingies every 5 seconds, we decided to stay on the ship for our remaining time in this region, enjoy some television, some food, and just enjoy not almost being dead. Once everybody was feeling a little bit more comfortable though, and all of their wounds had healed up for the most part, we started to head to an asteroid in orbit around the planet that just so happens to have traces of uranium. And yet again, I decided to use the demolition charges for their intended purpose, and as you can see, this worked out rather well for us. Though they couldn't really mine the uranium, and we didn't want them to in case some of it blew up, they helped us out with getting rid of some stone. After a while of being here in orbit once more though, we ended up picking up the signal of a mechanoid hub in orbit around the planet. Looks like we might just be finally zeroing in on the mechanoid hive. Of course though, because of the immense danger that these mechanoids pose though, we wanted to go ahead and get our uranium slug turrets built ASAP. I mean, that is the entire reason that we even landed up here after all. Once they were completed though, we were tickled plum pink and feeling safer already. Since these penetrate armor, they shouldn't have any issue penetrating the mechanical shell of a mechanoid either. But we still needed something else. We ended up building ourselves a fabrication area, and at this area we would start to work on a pilot assistant. This is a neural link that will allow our pilots to basically be connected in the brain with the ship itself, making them much better pilots, which is going to be quite crucial if we're trying to scurry around mechanoid defensive systems, as one might imagine. I'm sure it comes as no surprise that we ended up implanting this into the captain's brain, since he is the one that's always at the helm. And now that he's ready, once the anesthesia wore off, it was time for us to head to this mech platform. Well, looks like we finally arrived. I really hope that it has what we're looking for, some type of map or coordinates to the hive. Perhaps we can hack in and maybe trace its signal? Who knows? There's only one way to find out. We immediately started hacking blast doors and making our way through the mechanoid platform facility. Surprisingly, all was quite quiet and there were no mechanoids in sight. Well, at first. Looks like we've been a bit careless and we've awoken the sleeping bear within. These slumbering mechanical bastards were far too difficult for us to take on by ourselves on the inside, so we did the smart thing. We led them outside the doors where our ship could handle them for us. A smart solution, but also perhaps the most cowardly thing of all that we could have done. Here's the thing, we're not risking our lives nor trying to get ourselves killed before we make it to the hive, and even then, then we'd also prefer to stay alive. And a mechanoid platform like this, as you can easily see, isn't exactly the safest place to be having a fight. There are many different facilities just like this one, full of humans and also maybe some sentry drones, things like that, but none at all are quite as tough as mechanoids. All that just to say that this was an absolute slog. Trying to get through this facility looking for anything useful to help us find the mechive was a complete and utter nightmare. Genuinely, I mean that. It's an absolute miracle that we didn't end up losing anyone, because this was just very, very dangerous and very, very difficult. We had severe injuries, most of which were burns from incendiary launchers, from centipedes, and there were a few infections here and there. Thankfully, no one died, although we came awful close to losing Ditch when she almost, and I truly mean almost, bled to death. Thankfully, we managed to stop the bleeding literally within a minute or two of that happening. After we were finished searching the entire place, we retreated back to the ship with our tails tucked between our legs, and I was feeling a bit disheartened, and I actually mean that. We were still no closer to finding the hive, and I know I play things up for dramatic effect in the videos, but I really want to express the fact that the series almost ended here. Maybe that's my fault, because maybe I was trying to rush through a little too fast or what have you, but we almost ended up getting killed on several occasions, and it literally was a nightmare. But thankfully, no one died, and we're fine. The trip and the fight here, though, wasn't a complete waste, as we did end up getting many useful items, one of which being yet another unique rifle. We also ended up getting some Glitter World medicine, which was great. Some of these items, though, could not be obtained, as the risk of death was ever present in their vicinity. A lot of these mechs could not be tempted to come outside where our ship could blast them into pieces, so they're just gonna have to keep that medicine, I guess. Speaking again on the unique charge lance that we ended up getting, this custom charge lance actually is lightweight and ornamental. Exactly as to what that means, I don't know, except for the fact that it doesn't really have any weight. It is still a charge lance nonetheless, though, so I gave it to Nathan, as she, right next to Coleman, has the best shooting skill out of all of our crew. And also she has all of her fingers and arms, which is pretty important, I'd say. Since we're going to be landed at the mechanoid platform for at least a few more days, we've decided to start working on the research into hunter traps. Now, we don't really have all that much interest into the traps themselves, but using the backpack form where we can throw them, that might just be something we're interested in. While we're researching, I want the ship to be a bit more self-sufficient. This is something we should have done a long time ago, but up until this point we haven't really worried about it, as we've been traveling back and forth to these different areas so fast, and we keep finding packaged survival meals and other types of food. Anyhow, long story short, we built some hydroponics basins so that we can grow some rice on the ship, supplementing our diet a bit. After a while, we finished our research into hunter drones, now making them available for us to craft. We had Puppy here go to the machining table and start whipping up our very first one, and naturally, of course, we would also allow Puppy to equip it. It works very similar to a turret pack. You just kind of throw it and let it do its job, except this thing's job is to be a grenade with wings. Very exciting. So exciting, in fact, that we would spend the resources to build a couple more, one for Coleman and one for Nathan, since the two of them have unique weapons, and they're almost definitely going to be part of our squad who is doing these important attacks and stuff like that. Speaking of which, we ended up getting the coordinates to an orbital cache from an orbital trader that we were doing a little bit of bartering with. Basically, it's an item stash, but in the middle of an asteroid in space. Pretty cool. So we decided to head on over. I thought we might as well while we're trying to pinpoint the signal of the mechive. Since we didn't know exactly as to where this stash was inside the asteroid, we just started mining it out in a large X shape, and voila, we found it right in the middle. I really wish I could tell you that something interesting ended up happening here, but there was nobody defending it. Whoever had stored these things in here had been long gone and left nothing to defend it. What was in here? A good bit of food, a recurve bulb, some herbal medicine, Some strange items to stash away for sure, but it would seem that they're ours now. You know, looking back on that clip now, I realized that there was a turret in one of those rooms, but it was so easily defeated, I really didn't pay attention. Either way, though, all of this food and whatnot was ours now, and as such, we started hauling it back to the ship. But once we returned to our control room, we have finally zeroed in on the mechive. We've located its signal, and it's not all that far from our current position on the asteroid. This is it, my friends. This is what we have finally been waiting for. There's no going back now. The only way out is forward. Looks like we finally made it to the end of the line, folks. This place was a humongous orbital station of nothing but cold, unfeeling, uncaring, hardened steel and circuitry. There was no sound, but the absence of sound was deafening. In every single corner of the station, off to the distance, we could see gigantic anti-ship guns. Without our signal jammer, those would have surely turned us into space debris. We could see a multitude of mech processors. I suppose that makes sense, seeing how this is their main processing facility for the planet. And in the middle of it all, a Cerebrix core, a computer, a CPU controlling all mechanoids, a brain guiding the metallic blades of these bastards into the flesh of humanity. That is our target. But first, looks like we're going to need to deal with the welcoming party. Times like these, I couldn't be more grateful that we had turned our grav ship into a full-on gunship that could easily dismantle mechanoids with just a few uranium slugs. Our ship could keep the mechanoids distracted as our crew began taking on the defenses around the core. There were 4 large turrets in total, 2 of which being charge and the other 2 being incinerary. We decided to use our demo charges to get rid of the first, and this was extremely effective. However, it was also a lot more dangerous because someone had to go up and place the charge. So for the remaining 3, the decision was made to just simply use our weapons. With our entire crew, this would also be quite effective, not quite as fast, but much safer as we could take cover behind many of the mech processors within the room. We would continue forward, taking out each turret one by one. However, moving in such a large group like this with the entire crew has its drawbacks. For example, Nathan ended up taking several charge blasts straight to the chest, burning right through her vac suit, and she would have to be rescued. Luckily, she had survived the entire ordeal, though, and the rest of the crew could continue to the last final turret, destroying it. Now, all 4 of these turrets had been eviscerated, and the core is undefended. At least by outside sources, that is. For you see, the core relies on 3 stabilizers on the platform to keep it invulnerable. We can't touch it at all until these are destroyed. So our mission continues on. Due to their injuries and the possible response from the mechive after we destroy the stabilizers, most of our team will be staying inside the ship, not only to keep themselves alive, but also to keep the ship functioning and defending itself as well. The ship is providing a crucial role in keeping the mechanoids off our back, and without it, I fear we will fail. In the meantime, the captain and the others are going to begin searching for the first and eventually all 3 of these stabilizers. Easier said than done, I might add. Even though the ship was attracting most of the mechanoid threat, there were still quite a few stragglers and strays that we would have to face. And eventually, once we did find the very first of these 3 stabilizers, the entire facility was filled with centipedes and militaurs and many others that put up a pretty decent fight. Finally, once we put a dent in their metallic asses, though, we could destroy the stabilizers stabilizer. One down, two more to go. After the first stabilizer had been destroyed, though, the mechive would respond accordingly with a large mechanoid squad, calling in all the mechs from the surrounding orbital platforms to try to defend itself. This was going to be a lot on our ship and on our crew. Maybe much more than they would be able to handle, but we were too far in now. There was no turning back. The only thing we could do was endure and fight like we'd never fought before. Eventually, we had found the second stabilizer, and we even managed to do so without awakening its defensive squad. I had planned on using a mortar to shoot our anti-grain warhead on the inside, killing them before they even were an issue, but apparently mortars can't be used in space, which makes sense, I guess. Looks like we'll have to handle things the old way. The captain took the anti-grain warhead and chucked it right into the opening, while Puppy got ready to fire at it. That seemed to do the trick, but that activated yet another mechanoid squad to come to try to defend the hive. A much larger one, I might add. The platform was absolutely flooded with the mechanical menace. The ship's weapon systems had held out thus far, but they were beginning to run out of ammunition, and our guns' barrels were glowing red, overheating. An impossible fight was beginning, one in which we would not survive. We needed to hurry and to get rid of the last remaining stabilizer. We were running out of time, and even worse so, our poor Nathan would end up taking a charge blast straight through the heart, killing her, as her corpse slowly slumped to the metal plating of the ship's outer floors. In the low gravity, the battle continued on. Grump would rescue Mitsuya, bringing her inside, as we would have to rely on the ship to defend us solely. Thank God, though, the captain and the others had finally made it to the last stabilizers. The crew would try to keep the mechanoids off his back as he beat and bashed this stabilizer, eventually, finally destroying it. The core was finally open, completely undefended, and Dragon, being our closest crew member, would start rushing towards it. Although he wasn't the only one. It was an invasion of Scythers coming straight for Dragon, trying to stop him, and they would. Almost. Completely surrounded by Scythers with no other option, Dragon would decide to destroy the core. Dragon begins to tear apart the hair-thin cerebral mesh inside the Cerebrix core. The mesh twists and groans as if alive, electricity arcs among the latticework frame. Then, in an instant, all goes dark and lifeless. Just in the nick of time, Dragon, old buddy, old pal, looks like you just about had your head scissored off by two long arms. It's a shame that we had to destroy the core. Imagine all the good those mechanoids could have done for the people of this planet if they were under our control. But we didn't have enough time to salvage the tech, as that Scyther was about 2 seconds from killing Dragon. It would seem that literally all of the mechanoids have went offline. Kinda crazy that that's all it took. I mean, that was a lot, but one simple core, one simple brain to control them all. Perhaps, thinking about it now, it's for the best that they're offline. It's the more ethical thing to do. But now, we finally won. We've given so much to complete our mission. Some of us have given more than others. Some of us have gave a lot. Some of us have gave everything. But it was because of their gracious and courageous sacrifices that we can even share in this victory today. And I know that they'd be thrilled to see us now. You know, if destroying the core really shuts down all mechanoids, doesn't that mean... Well, looks like we're gonna have that asteroid base after all. Until next time, friends. Hello, hello, and welcome back, my gracious grav ship crew, to yet another episode of RimWorld Odyssey. The final episode, I might add. Last episode, we completed our crucial mission of destroying the mechive core, rendering every single mechanoid deactivated. The same mechanoids that were populating the asteroid where we plan on building our base once more. So, today that's exactly what we're going to be doing. To begin though, we are going to be laying to rest our friend Nathan, who sacrificed her life in the battle with the mechanoids. For the time being, we've built a steel sarcophagus similar to what we did for our old Captain Sissy in the cargo bay of the ship, and we are going to be burying her here and giving her a proper hero's funeral. Next on the agenda, our ship is in desperate need of some major repairs due to the battle with the mechs. Our hull is breached in several different areas, for example, and many of the ship's weapon systems are damaged severely as well, or just completely destroyed, so we had to take care of that as well. The mechanoids are offline, but we don't want to become a sitting duck for pirates. As we were making these repairs to the ship, Fitz has seemed to fall in love with Grump, and the two of them are now together. It would seem that the drama and the intensity of the battle and the situation as a whole with taking down the mechive has driven the two of them closer. There's just one little problem. Fitz is already married to someone named Cece. The whole damn crew is full of cheaters, apparently. Seems like Coleman must have infected the others with the slut virus, as he seems to be our patient zero, being the first to cheat and whatnot. In more depressing news, Puppy here is injured pretty badly. So bad, in fact, that his spine has been shattered by a Lancer's charge lance. Something I didn't realize after the battle at the end of last episode. Not only had we lost Nathan completely, but it looks like Puppy is going to be bedridden furthermore. Something I thought we could do to maybe help relieve this is finding a bionic spine for him. Now, we are on a mech platform where treasures galore are, well, galore, and there are some pretty great treasures in these types of areas. So we started exploring all throughout the rest of the mech platform, all these buildings, without any issues since all the mechanoids are deactivated, I might add. But unfortunately, it seems that we never came across a spine or anything that could fix Puppy's spine. Regardless though, we were able to find some other useful treasures like Glitter World Medicine without getting turned into a fine pink mist by any mechanoids. We also found an Archotech leg. Now, of course, this won't help with his spine, but maybe we could sell it to an orbital trader for a bionic spine. I don't know. Then we found something a little bit more interesting. This is a Tech Prof Sub-Persona core. This little device apparently has an AI core that will allow us to finish any research that we are currently working on. So some major projects like marine or recon armor or advanced fabrication, something like that, I'm sure it would be absolutely perfect for. How does this help Puppy? It doesn't. I kinda gave up hope on him by this point. In our pursuit of resources and items before we leave the mech platform, though, the captain would destroy what remained of the core, getting us advanced components and plasteel, and, of course, a persona core from it as well. And then, I remembered, we have a healer mech serum from, like, episode 1 or 2 or something that I completely forgot about. I think we got it in one of those ancient bunkers when we were looking for our first grav core. We ended up using this on Puppy, and actually it did heal his spine, which is pretty incredible. And to think I was just going to let him lie there with a crippled up spine. Sorry about that, buddy. Glad to have you back. Now that Puppy's spine isn't broken anymore, he can actually help us out with deconstructing and also shredding many of these mechanoids, and there were quite a few here. We were going to take them for steel and components and whatever else we could get from them before we decided to hit the road. Once we had finally shredded enough of them to our heart's content, I think it's about time that we finally head back home. Finally, joy, oh joyous days, we are finally home. And it is about damn time, might I add. Granted, things look a little bit different than how we left them with a gigantic mech invasion and whatnot. And to be fair, a good portion of our crew have never even been here or seen this place before. Though of course they have heard our stories about this place, as well as our epic escape from the mechanoid invasion. They really did quite a number on the base, so much in fact that it's barely recognizable, and we're most likely going to have to basically start from scratch. Looks like we have a lot of work to do. Let's not waste any time. First things first, we need to get this place back into working order before we can make it self-sufficient, where it's able to stand on its own legs without the grav ship while our teams are out on missions or whatever else. Essentially, right now, we're just getting the lights on, and we're also getting some vents and walls back in place. But of course, it wasn't all going to be building. As you can see, and as you've probably guessed, we have a lot of deactivated mechanoids. Notice I say deactivated, not dead, because we can't haul them, we can't do anything with them until we start killing them. I wish it were as easy as flipping a switch on their back or pushing a button under a capsule or something, but looks like we're going to have to revert to the more primitive method of stabbing them in their exoskeleton sternum and also shooting them with shotguns. Now technically I'm pretty sure we could have carried the deactivated mechanoids out into a pile and not have worried about it, but we actually want to use them. By use them, I mean shred up their corpses into steel. We basically have an unlimited amount of steel here at the asteroid base because of all the dead mechanoids, which in my opinion gives more of an asteroid base look and feel to our hallways and other rooms that we're going to be using steel-plated flooring in. I like Vaxstone, but I don't want everything to have that dull brown look to it, of course. Yes, instead now it's going to have a dark, dull gray look, so much better. Right? Well, either way, the steel that we're getting from the mechanoids was going to be very, very useful for other things, like solar panels that we're going to use to power the base, of course, as well. Once again, a bit poetic. Not only is our gunship grav ship solely made up from a lot of steel from mechanoids, but most of the components and whatnot here at the asteroid base are as well. Now that we've got a lot of the basic stuff, like power, some lights, and also some oxygen within the base, we can start on some more complicated and crucial things like hydroponics basins, as well as a kitchen and food storage area. Our top priority is going to be making this place self-sufficient away from the ship, as I've discussed. For now, we're going to be growing rice in these basins, and these, accompanied with the few that we have on the ship, should be sufficient enough to feed all of our crew and growing population of crew here inside the base. But I do have a more long-term solution that we'll get to in just a moment. And even with the small amount of progress that we've just now made, the base is looking much, much better and is starting to really take shape once again. It brings so much joy to my heart to see our base finally coming together, and it'll be staying that way this time. No longer just surviving, but also thriving. But just as we've seen time and time again, whenever we're up, somebody's gotta come to try to bring us down, huh? Dirty, unwashed pirate scum. Fine. If they want to send their privateers and soldiers to die out in the void of space, away from their warm homes and beds, so be it. We'll happily oblige. It's not the first time that we've spilled pirate blood here at the asteroid, and something tells me that it surely won't be the last. The last time, though, that they had attacked us here, we didn't have all the autocannons and slug turrets on our ship. This is going to be much easier and much different. It would seem that your pirate king or captain, whatever they call themselves, has abandoned you and forsaken you. Such a pity. Not all the pirates were completely useless, though. This one, going by the name of Justice, actually had a really, really good crafting skill. Just the kind of fella that we need to go about shredding some mechanoids for us. Assuming he decides to join us, of course. I mean, the alternative is turning into a blood popsicle outside, so, you know. choose wisely. And we also started stripping the other pirates. We could really use those vac suits in our armory for all of the new crew members that we look forward to getting in the future. You may have noticed though, this pirate in particular seems to not be suffocating to death or affected at all even by the vacuum of space after having her suit torn off of her. I can't believe that I've only just realized this throughout the entire playthrough, but this is a special xenotype called the Starjack, which is apparently bioengineered for the vacuum of space. And perhaps the most interesting part is our crew member Fitz is also a Starjack. You can see by the little weird curve things inside his forehead. Now I saw those and, I thought it'd be rude to ask, so I just never figured this out, I suppose. Anywho though, with all the new vac suits that we got from our dead pirate friends who were just so sweet to donate those to us, along with all the weapons from the ship, we now have a stocked or semi-stocked armory for the asteroid base as well, ready at a moment's notice to any crew members in need, though most of them are always keeping that motherfucker thing on them. Our hydroponics room is also producing our very first harvest of rice since we've rebuilt the base. Finally, it is becoming self-sufficient. I know, sorry, I keep on saying that, but I really want to stress that this base doesn't need the grav ship anymore, and that is the most important part, because if we end up continuing this series, maybe a season 2 or something, I want the grav ship to be able to leave this place, of course. But when we're not out on missions, we are going to need a nice place for everyone to stay, and obviously we're building the asteroid base, but included in everyone is also going to be our feathered avian companions. And so, as such, we built a very nice and comfortable room for our pet birds. We ended up getting them into their room and they seemed pretty happy about it. It was a little bit hard to tell because they were kind of injured. Okay, so maybe I had a little bit of an oopsie and I almost killed them due to vacuum exposure, but I didn't. And last episode, and the episode before, and also I think a community post, I asked you fine folks for a name for our macaw, and we have the name of Macaulay Culkin, which is a very nice name, and is also provided by our friend, Irate Prag. So thank you ever so much, and thank you to everyone who suggested names. There were a lot of really good ones in there, so I really appreciate it. We do still have a lot of work to do before we turn this asteroid house into an asteroid home, and we're currently working on a lot of that, which entails more mining, but I feel like you guys might get a little bit too bored if that's all we do this episode, so I also have a few adventures to the surface planned. We've detected some faint and disappearing signals from an abandoned colony on the planet. Hard to say what awaits us there, but there's only one way to find out. We have an adventuring squad comprised of Bentley, Didge, Coleman, and Mitsuya. I know Mitsuya only has one eye, but Coleman refused to leave his lover. Regardless of her little seeing problem though, she is an experienced fighter, and they are all going to be perfect for this job and for adventuring a bit. We arrived on a stormy evening and started going all throughout the wooden structures of this abandoned place, and to be honest with you, there was actually nothing here for the most part, except for a beautiful, shiny, glassy black rock which appeared to be obsidian. Not gold or silver, but a valuable resource nonetheless. We did also find a couple of sleeping bags that were made out of devil strand. Why somebody would waste this precious textile on sleeping bags, I don't know, but it's ours now. Since the colony seemed to be pretty useless for the most part, we ended up going into an ancient danger, at which point we found a tech print, glitter world medicine, and yet another tornado generator. We also found a bunch of sleeping people in these cryo-sleep caskets. Perhaps they were the colonists who lived here. They seemed to be pretty friendly with us, so we didn't blow their brains out, and we just kind of went on our merry little way after loading everything back into the shuttle. With that, we were off to our next destination and our next adventure, just a few clicks to the northwest. This appeared to be an ancient, abandoned junkyard and warehouse. Surely there are some useful metals here at the very least. You would hope so, and as would I. But we were playing a little bit fast and loose because I'm a silly Billy, and I almost got Coleman and Ditch killed, but they didn't die, and that's the most important part. And we ended up finding a few different things, steel component boxes, stuff like that. Nothing too fancy, I guess. With all our newly acquired items from our little excursion to the surface, we finally ended up returning home, bringing back with us some uranium and many of the other things we mentioned, as well as a billiards and poker table. Absolutely perfect for a proper recreation room on the inside of the asteroid base. Sure, you need to feed your crew that live here, but you also have to keep them entertained. Otherwise, that's when cabin fever sets in and somebody will go batshit and start killing everyone else. Or, so I hear. Anyway, though, this is Justice. You remember him, the pirate who was trying to slice our throats just a few days ago? Well, he's not wanting to do that anymore. Instead, he wants to start shredding some mechanoids so we have even more steel. What a kind fellow. Now, I don't mean to bore you to sleep, because I know this can be quite boring, so I just kind of sped up these clips for a very, and I do mean very, long time. We've done really nothing but shred up mechanoids and also melt down steel slag chunks, because that's basically what the entire asteroid was populated with by this point, and we also needed it because we needed a lot of steel because we have some pretty big plans. And you can actually see a pretty big difference on the asteroid itself after many a day of doing all this cleanup work and all this repurposing of resources, of course. But real quick, before we get to those big projects, I just want to mention that we also done some research into advanced lighting, because I'm so sick of the warm, homely lighting. We're in space, by golly, we need some fluorescent, depressing lights. As we're working on that research, though, we started working on a new project that is going to be comprised of heavy bridges. This, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be our shuttle landing pad. It's not all that large, but I don't think we'll need it to be, as we only have the one shuttle, and in the future, if we do another season or anything like that, we'll probably only be expanding those by about another 1 or 2, so should be plenty of room, I'd say. By the time this was all completed, we also finished up that research, and now, instead of looking like a cabin in the woods, we're looking like a proper space station. Ah, a white fluorescent eyesore for every room. Moving on to our next project, it's actually going to be a pretty large mining operation in the asteroid on the lower end of the base. Now, I don't want to spoil anything for you, but maybe a little bit of a hint that it is going to be something that we've used or had since episode 1 that we've yet to use. More on that in just a moment. For now, we need to start working on some proper defenses for the base. Not to beat a dead space horse here, but you've heard me say several times I don't want the base relying on the grav ship, and we're not, at least not for food or power or anything like that. But if we were to get attacked by pirates right now without the ship's weapon systems, I would really hate to see what happens. And so, because of that, we built several autocannons. Now then, with our defenses taken care of, for the moment we can focus on our little mining project. This, my friends, is our garden. Yes? No, you didn't hear me incorrectly. Yes, a garden. Ah, I see. Perhaps you've already forgotten about our Archean seeds, the terraforming trees. Yes, now who looks like a silly little goober? You do. Anyhow, though, we ended up planting 2 of these trees inside this room, and as you can see, they actually very, and I do mean very quickly, start terraforming the land around them. It was actually very beautiful to watch. Yes, indeed, a little slice of the planet right here in our very own orbital base. A beautiful little area, or what is soon to be a beautiful area, as we are going to be turning it into a rice garden for the time being. It would be a shame, and also quite foolish, to have all this land and not grow something that we can use, and what we need right now is going to be food, of course. This is actually rich soil, so it should grow very quickly as well. Now, with this being our most natural and most beautiful place in the entire base, as strange as it may seem, we're going to be growing rice here, but I've also decided to put the previous Captain Sissy, as well as our crew member Nathan's tombs in here as well, so that they may rest among the stars, but also in their soil, where their ancestors would have been buried as well on the planet. I'm a sucker for tradition and also for sentimentals. Now, not only would we have them move there to be buried for the rest of their, well, afterlife, I suppose, but we would also have Grump and all her wonderful art skill use the beautiful obsidian from the planet's surface that we had at the abandoned colony to make a statue commemorating their lives and their service. The statue was absolutely gorgeous, as obsidian is a gorgeous material, and it was of the current Captain Woody, since he's the current captain when the statue was installed. I mean, after all, we want this base to be used by generations of our crew to come. As you can see, this particular room being very beautiful and whatnot, of course, and being the only true nature from the surface that we have here, is also going to be used for several different purposes. As I mentioned, I want it to be something of a garden, not only for crops, but a place that people can come, look at beautiful things like the room itself, play some chess, hang out, and just be comfortable and enjoy themselves. You can consider it a little slice of life and vegetation in a void that is completely devoid of any life at all. And with this beautiful garden, all of the things that we've put in place this episode and everything that we've done to the asteroid, it finally stands on its own legs without assistance from anywhere else. And I think that it is truly an asteroid base now. A proper one, I mean to say. It was by this point that I actually started moving many of the crew away from the ship and into their very own rooms inside the base, as they were much more beautiful and just better in quality overall. And you know what? Everyone seemed pretty happy now. Well, it would seem we have more pirates who have come to put a great big wet towel on the flames of our happiness. Great. Most interestingly, though, we have Schlitzer, who happens to be the ex-lover of Ditch. It would seem this attack might be personal. As they landed on the opposite side of our little floating humble abode here, we were able to pick him out of the crowd. We'll try not to kill him if we can help it. Ditch will probably want to have some words with him at the end of this. We decided to use the last of our demo charges that we had, trying to place them in a little choke point to kill off many of the pirates in one go. This didn't exactly work as we planned, as it normally doesn't. Although we did end up injuring quite a few of them with the charges, which is better than nothing, I suppose. Our brand new base auto turrets, along with some from the ship, were managing to keep them at bay. Although, a few of them actually managed to rush our ship's crew, managing to get past the doors and inside. Even though this happened, though, they didn't like what they found within, as we cut many a throat and also pounded several of them with lead. And with that, the pirate threat was no more, for now at least. Now that we won the battle, we did the usual song and dance of going through stripping many of these pirates of their gear so that we could use it, and also healing a few of them up as best we could to take them inside. It would seem that Ditch would also have the opportunity to be reunited with her old flame, her old oh shit. Oh, okay. It must have been a pretty bad breakup, I suppose, huh? I don't know what he did, but I bet he deserved that. We would end up taking a couple of pirates in, tending to their wounds, as I mentioned earlier, feeding them, and most importantly, attempting to convince them to join us here instead of being tossed out into the void of space. Not only would we take care of our prisoners, though, but we would start taking better care of our crew, starting with some better rooms. We put plant pots in every single room, which is gorgeous, and we also put a few sculptures in as well. We need to make more, but those who get them are gonna love them, okay? And since the captain has been working his ass off on, well, destroying the hive and helping us rebuild the base here, I think that's only appropriate that he get his own personal bedroom that is just at least slightly better than everyone else's, if you know what I'm saying. You keep the captain happy and he'll keep you fed. Just kidding, he's a nice guy. Another little project that we ended up working on was yet another grav anchor. Of course, if you've been watching this series, you know that this is something you need so that when you leave in the grav ship, the place isn't completely gone. I built one of these previously. It was destroyed, and yet we could still return. I don't know if we need this one, but I built it anyways. Okay, moving on. Finally, the largest addition that we are going to be adding on to our orbital base here is going to be something of a docking station and or landing pad for our grav ship, Gunship. Whenever we're coming back from missions, we need a proper place to park this bad boy, and doing it right on the edge here isn't exactly ideal, as one might guess. I definitely think that this is going to be a lot more efficient, and not only that, it looks a lot better too. Having a nice straight edge like this to dock with the ship, it's much more pleasing on the eyes, at least in my opinion. Another great part to having the docking station is it keeps the ship at a bit of a further distance from our base's defenses. That way, if we are using the ship and the base's defenses, they're not going to accidentally hit one another, say with our rocket swarm launchers. By this point, we also finally recruited Virtue and Hooper, the two pirates who were trying to kill us a few days ago, into our crew, and we're tickled plum pink to have a couple of extra hands. We're also putting some finishing touches on the base as for right now, but since this can be a bit boring mining things out, how about another adventure, this time to another mech platform? I personally would be quite interested to see what these are like with all the mechs deactivated. And for this little mission, we would actually end up taking Virtue and Hooper along with us, just to see if they're really loyal to us. You never really know if somebody's got your back until they have the opportunity to shoot it. So we would arrive at the platform, and without the hive, we could immediately tell a big difference. It was mostly just a floating chunk of silent, cold, dead metal. Now, the obvious benefit here is thanks to our heroic mission destroying the mechive last episode, we don't have to worry about any defenses or attacks from mechanoids, at least in these platforms. Now, by this point, surely others have noticed that the mechanoids are no longer functioning as well, so we do need to be careful in case someone has the same idea to loot these places as we do. In this one in particular, we didn't find much except for some hyperweave and also an ancient power cell, which would be quite useful. As we were leaving, we also got word from the Outlanders there was an item stash just below our coordinates on the planet's surface, so we decided to head down there. Initially, the place appeared to be vacant until we saw two waster pirates popping out of it, and we had to quickly put them into the snowy frozen ground. Once we had finished them both off, inside the item stash was an orbital bombardment targeter. Since they didn't decide to use this to try to kill us, I'm guessing they were paid to try to maybe guard it for someone else. I don't know for sure, but something I do know is that this waster pirate surprisingly has given us our very first charge weapon of this entire series. Don't get me wrong, I'm very excited, but I'm shocked we haven't seen anyone else using one. Upon our arrival back home, we quickly unloaded our shuttle and started prepping all our new items to be taken in, starting out with our power cell. Similar to our grav power cells on the ship, this cell doesn't actually require anything to function, and it passively generates electricity, which is a massive help. We would also end up giving Ditch the charge rifle because she's a good shot and an experienced fighter, of course, but she has also been loyal to us since the very beginning. In case you've forgotten, which I, of course, would never, Ditch here was actually the first crew member to join us that wasn't part of our initial crew. She has earned and deserves so much more than we can afford to give her. By the time that we had returned, we also finished up another new section of the base. This is a new hydroponics area as well as another storage area for just some overflow, because, well, we have a lot of items. And with this new hydroponics area, we're going to be growing food here, and in the old one, some cloth. We'll most likely just be using it for some uniforms for all of our crew members, but whatever we have left over can go towards other recreational items, or we might sell it. And since we're constantly getting attacked by pirates, I thought it might be a good idea for us to do some research into recon armor. But Rat Daddy, the video's almost over. My god, you'll never finish recon armor in that amount of time. Well, I have a little ace up my sleeve in the form of that tech AI thing, and we immediately finished the research. How you like them apples? Now with this research, we'll be able to build some proper armor for all of our crew to properly protect ourselves against the pirates. Since most of them seem to only have vac suits, this should really give us the upper hand. We toiled day in and day out working on a few suits of armor and also purchasing some more advanced components and stuff from some orbital traders, and voila, we have quite a few folks who finally have it, though not everyone. A vast majority of our crew are properly armored now. Finally, for the protective coup de grace, we started building some hunter drone traps. We've noticed firsthand that these are very efficient and effective, so we started using them for good this time around, instead of, accidentally getting blown up by them. And with that, my friends, I do truly think that our base is completed. Whoa, future Rad Knight here to tell you that this base isn't completed until it has a proper name. And I actually forgot to give it one in the last episode, which you're currently watching right now in the supercut. And to make up for that, I am going to be doing so right now. We have the name of Mechanoid's Requiem from our good friend Colston 3. The reason for the name is because the base will be their final journey, and indeed it is, and indeed it was. So thank you ever so much, Colston 3, and to everyone who provided names. Apologies that I didn't get to it in the last episode, if you're rewatching this, of course. I had a lot going on, my internet was out, I just wasn't in the right headspace, and I completely forgot, so I apologize, but I love the name, and I am glad that I can give it a proper name here in the supercut. Back to past Rat Night. Now, there may be more that we could put in, but all the bare necessities and things of that nature are completed. We're no longer surviving at the asteroid base, we are actually thriving at this point, as we hope to do. But, the thing is, at this point, the question kind of comes in. We've destroyed the mechive, we've even destroyed insectoid hives, and we've done so much stuff. What do we do now? Well, we did end up getting an offer from the Empire of this planet. The Imperials said that if we hunt down a fugitive for them, they'd be willing to pay us with a useful item, so if we ended up coming back to this series, perhaps we could become some type of bounty hunting service, making our vast fortune among the stars. We do have a more than adequate ship after all to do this. Or perhaps if we return, we deal with these pesky pirates first and foremost. They have become a bit of a nuisance. Surely finding their hideout and killing their captain or king or whatever they call themselves will put a damp rag on this raging fire of piracy. It couldn't be any harder than the hive, that's for sure. But my friends, as I clear the intestines of pirates off my boots here on the asteroid, I suppose for now, this is farewell. Hello, fine folks. I just want to come in at the end of the video, as I always do, and thank you guys ever so much for watching today's episode, as well as the supercut, if you're watching this a little bit in the future. This series, and genuinely, I know I say this about every series, this one has been so fun. It really has. The new DLC is so badass. I've seen a lot of you guys have been getting it, and you guys seem like you're really enjoying it. Seems like everyone in the community is loving it. They really knocked it out of the park with this one, and it's just been such a blast, and that's why I think I am so eager to return to this colony and to our people here. There's so much to do. We could quite literally just live here on the asteroid. I've been asking you guys for the last few episodes what you would like to see in our next series here in Odyssey, or if you'd like to see a modded series, please continue commenting in the comment section down below about ideas that you'd like to see. I would maybe like to extend this one and continue this one. It doesn't have to be from this perspective. We could send out other parties to other asteroids to kind of like a Minecraft skyblock, right? Minimal resources, and we try to make do. We could send colonies to volcanic biomes. There's just so much to do, and I really look forward to doing it all with you guys. But I love you guys ever so much. Again, thank you. Thank you so much for supporting me. Thank you for watching the videos, supporting the series, the videos, everything. You guys are amazing as always. And I hope to see you next time. Goodbye.